What if the most efficient weapon of war wasn't forged in fire and steel, but sprang from the jaws of a beast? Picture this, a battlefield not just stained with blood but buzzing with the primal instinct of animals trained to kill: dogs, elephants, and even swarms of stinging insects. Could the ancient generals have been more circus ringmasters than military strategists, orchestrating a symphony of chaos with every growl and roar? Cats, yes, cats, once prowled the shadows of ancient combat, their stealthy grace transforming them into lethal spies. Imagine a Persian envoy, fur fluffed and eyes sharp as daggers, delivering death with a purr. Or how about elephants, colossal titans that crushed enemy formations? They charged like armored tanks, their tusks glinting in the sun, a grotesque ballet of destruction. What happens when a creature that weighs more than a car decides it doesn't like the look of your battalion? Now consider the idea of coalition warfare, beasts allied with humans, each with its own agenda. Parrots squawk battle cries, their vibrant feathers splattered with the blood of the fallen, while war dogs executed brutal tactics that would make modern strategists shudder. Think Game of Thrones meets Animal Planet, where fur and fury intertwine in an explosion of primal violence. War wasn't just declared, it was unleashed, a circus of death where every creature played its part, and the audience. They were the ones left gasping for breath. Ever heard of the Macedonian army's use of snakes? That's right. Venomous vipers were not just the stuff of nightmares, they slithered into the hearts of their foes, delivering fear faster than any sword could. The moment a soldier heard the hiss, doubt crept in. Would it be the blade or the fangs that ended his life? The answer teetered on the edge of a knife, as the menacing whisper of the unknown consumed them whole. Now, consider the dark comedy of it all. Ancient strategists plotted, not just with swords and shields, but with the absurdity of training bees to attack enemy commanders. Can you hear the laughter echoing in the distance? We've got our infantry, cavalry, and oh, look! A swarm of bees. How ludicrous, how terrifying. And yet, who can deny the effectiveness of a stinging surprise when the stakes are life or death? As you tread this treacherous path of forgotten lore, ask yourself, what defines war? Is it the clash of arms, or the wild, untamed spirit of the beasts that once roamed the earth? Enter into the shadowy annals of history where every paw print tells a story of strategic madness, where the terrifying beauty of nature collided with the horrors of combat. The truth waits, poised to strike when you least expect it, ready to ensnare your mind in its deadly grip. Will you dare to confront the grotesque ballet of nature in warfare? Time to make your choice. Thunder rumbled in the distance, a warning growl from the heavens above. The air, thick and damp, crackled with tension as soldiers huddled in their makeshift camp. Shadows danced around flickering fires, each flicker a heartbeat, each heartbeat a whispered prayer. I remember the scent of sweat and fear intermingling, and the taste of iron on my tongue, as if the very essence of war was coursing through my veins. I was there, in that moment, gripped by the pulse of impending chaos, standing shoulder to shoulder with men who wore their courage like armor, yet felt the weight of trembling uncertainty deep within their bones. Then came the sound, a thunderous rush, a stampede that shook the earth beneath our feet and echoed in our souls. Horses, wild-eyed and breathless, thundered into the clearing, their riders a frenzied blur of metal and flesh. The creatures were not mere beasts, they were warriors of their own, powerful and untamed, embodying both the wrath of the storm and the fragility of life. I couldn't help but think of Selim, a soldier whose heart beat in rhythm with his stallion, a creature named Thorn, as wild as the fires of hell. Selim's dark eyes mirrored the storm above, filled with a complex swirl of fear and longing. "Hold fast, Selim!" I shouted above the roar, gripping his arm with a fierce urgency. "This isn't a game, it's life or death." He jerked his gaze from the galloping beasts to mine, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. "But Thorn, he's more than a horse. He is my spirit, my soul. If I ride into battle with him, I am invincible." There it was, the raw essence of their bond, a love forged in the fires of war and tempered by shared scars. It was the kind of connection that twisted the heart, making us question our own humanity. The battlefield had no mercy, it would swallow them both whole, leaving nothing but memories and echoes of what once was. The camp fell silent, a prelude to destruction, and I felt the world around me fade into a haunting stillness. Memories of battle flooded my mind, of elephants stomping through the ranks, their trunks raised like living siege engines, the ground shaking beneath their weight, and the cries of soldiers mingling with the trumpeting of beasts. I remember the scent of fear, the taste of iron, and the sharpness of betrayal, as animals became both allies and victims in the theatre of war. Another voice broke through my reverie, Aurelia, a healer, her hand stained with the blood of fallen comrades, her heart heavy with the weight of loss. Selim, you must understand. To ride into battle is to court death. Thorn is your ally, yes, but he cannot shield you from the chaos that awaits. You must choose wisely. Her words were sharp, imbued with a desperation that twisted like a knife in my chest. I felt the anguish of her spirit, the weight of responsibility pressing down on her like the very armor that encased the warriors they fought beside. But Selim's heart was lost in the chaos, a tempest of emotion swirling through him. The bond he shared with Thorn was a fragile thread in the storm of warfare. You don't understand, he shouted, his voice cracking like glass, raw and unyielding. Without him, I am nothing. The desperation clawed at him, and I could see the anguish of choice radiating from his very being, as if the universe itself had conspired against him. The thunder roared louder now, a growl of the gods, echoing the turmoil in his heart, a reminder that the storm would not wait for his decision. The night hung heavy with the promise of blood and sacrifice, as I felt the weight of history bearing down on us, the ghosts of countless warriors whispering secrets of triumph and despair. The memories of men who had ridden into battle with their animals, destined to become legends or mere phantoms, loomed over us like a dark cloud. I remember the chill of night settling around us, igniting a flame of recklessness within me. Selim! You don't have to face this alone. I grabbed his shoulders, the warmth of his skin contrasting sharply with the night's cold embrace. You can choose to fight, but you can also choose to live. But the battle drums were already sounding, a rhythm that thrummed through the air, pulling at the very essence of our beings. The horses whinnied, their instincts aflame, sensing the call of the wild, the pull of destiny. I watched as Selim's gaze drifted to Thorn, the horse's breath misty in the chilling night, a magnificent beast caught in the throes of fate. I could see it, the unbreakable bond, the reflection of Selim's own fears and dreams mirrored in the creature's eyes. Then it happened, time slowed, and I felt the world break apart like fragile glass. Selim leaned down, whispering to Thorn, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the air like a prayer. Together, my friend. We ride together. In that heartbeat, everything shifted, the weight of what was and what could be hung unspoken in the air, a fragile thread strung between hope and despair. And then they were off, charging into the darkness, a living embodiment of courage and chaos, leaving us mere mortals behind, etched forever in the tapestry of battle. The ground erupted as the clash of steel met the cries of animals, a symphony of war that would haunt our dreams. The battlefield became a canvas, painted in shades of fear, valor, and an almost surreal beauty, where every warrior, man and beast alike, danced on the knife's edge of existence. I felt the tears threaten to spill as I watched specters of war rise from the ground, the echoes of those who had come before, deafening and silent, their memories etched into the night. In that moment, I understood, the heart of warfare thrived not only in the steel and blood, but in the animals who shared the burden, the souls who walked beside us into the abyss. They, too, carried the weight of fear, the burden of loyalty, and the bittersweet taste of freedom that war could never grant. Their spirits soared and crashed alongside our own, tethered to the fate of men who dared to wield their love, their strength, and their lives in the face of chaos. Hold the line! I shouted, my voice swallowed by the tempest of war, as the shadows loomed and the night deepened. The echoes of their hearts would forever resonate within me, the pulse of ancient warfare, an unyielding bond between man and beast, a symphony of survival that transcended time. And as I stood in the eye of the storm, I knew this was only the beginning. The thunder of hooves, a cacophony like a heartbeat gone wild, reverberates through the air. It's all-consuming, drowning out the cries of men and the clashing of steel. Each galloping stride is a promise, a curse, a whisper of desperation. I stand frozen, breathless, as the world around me blurs into chaos. The sun, a molten orb, hangs low, casting long shadows that stretch like ghosts across the battlefield. Here, amidst the smoke and the acrid scent of gunpowder, the line between life and death grows thin, almost translucent. I look to my left, where Marcus clings to the reins of his horse, a magnificent beast named Tempest. The great animal's muscles ripple beneath its coat, eyes wide and wild, reflecting a primal fear. Marcus's knuckles turn white, and I see his lips move, silent prayers swallowed by the clamor. He's always been the brave one, the knight with dreams of glory. But today, in these moments stretched like thin glass, I see the cracks in his armor. Stay close, he shouts over the din, but the desperation in his voice is unmistakable. I remember when he was just a boy, spinning tales of honor and valor. Now, those tales feel like chains, dragging us deeper into the abyss of this darkened reality. To my right, Ilara, my sister, her fiery spirit tempered by the weight of dread, pulls back on her reins, her horse, Storm, rearing up in protest. She shoots me a glance, fiery and fierce, but I see the flicker of uncertainty that shadows her gaze. We can't turn back now, can we? The question hangs in the air, heavy with unspoken fears. I don't know how to answer. Forward! I scream, a surge of defiance igniting within me. It's a lie, an empty promise, but I need to believe it. We all need to believe it, or we'll drown in the despair that clings to our hearts like the mud beneath our boots. The ground trembles beneath us as the enemy's cavalry crashes into our lines. Horses and men collide in a whirl of chaos, a grotesque ballet of bodies and blood. I can feel the heat of the moment crawling up my skin, the raw intensity of it all. Tempest, in a moment of sheer instinct, rears back, and I grasp at Marcus, my heart racing as I pull him close. We can't let them take us. But it's not just the enemy we're fighting, it's the ghosts of our past, the echo of our choices. I remember the days when laughter filled our home, when the smell of fresh bread lingered in the air like a sweet promise. Those memories feel like fading stars against the chaos of war. Ilara! I cry, my voice barely audible against the roar of conflict. She's slipping into the shadows where fear reigns. I reach for her, my hand finding her arm, and in that moment, I see her, my brave, fierce sister, who once danced in the meadows, free and unburdened by the chains of this world. Don't let go! As if to mock my plea, a sudden explosion shatters the air, and the earth erupts beneath us. Time fractures, and I'm caught in the space between breaths, an eternity suspended in chaos. I can hear Tempest's whinny, laced with terror, and it resonates deep within me, an echo of all that is lost. Stay with me! Marcus shouts, but his voice is swallowed by the storm. The cavalry clashes, men shouting, horses screaming, the very fabric of our lives unraveling. I feel the weight of every choice pressing down, the burden of every victory and defeat. And then, in the eye of the storm, I see it, Ilara, her resolve crumbling like dry earth beneath the relentless rain. I can't, she gasps. The words slice through me, sharper than any blade. I remember her laughter, the way her eyes sparkled when she dreamed of a life beyond the fields, of adventures that danced just beyond reach. Fight! I scream, and the word feels foreign, a desperate plea for strength we may not have. But within that fragile moment, a flicker ignites in her eyes, a rebellious spark. For our dreams, Ilara! For freedom! The battle rages on, and as I cling to her, the world around us blurs into a distorted haze, where the line between hope and despair is drawn in blood. It's not just the enemy we face, it's the shadows of our own making, the specters of fear that loom large, whispering doubts into our hearts. Hold the line! Marcus bellows, his voice breaking through the veil of chaos. I see him charge forward, the embodiment of courage, even as the terror in his eyes betrays his resolve. A knight, yet a man, flawed and full of fear. For every heroic tale spun on the tongues of bards, there are countless stories of those who falter, who break, who bleed. I take a breath, the air thick and suffocating, and in that breath, I remember what it means to fight, not just against the enemy, but against the darkness that threatens to consume us. I feel the weight of my own fears, my insecurities, but with each heartbeat, I push them aside. Together! I shout, my voice rising above the tumult. Ilara's grip tightens, and for a moment, we are united in our defiance. The world around us swirls with chaos, but in this moment of clarity, we are warriors, bound by blood and courage, standing tall against the tide. Push forward. Marcus's voice is a rallying cry, echoing through the chaos. The cavalry is more than just men and horses, they are the embodiment of our hopes, our fears, our very essence. And as we charge into the fray, I realize this battle is not just for survival, it's for what we hold dear, the memories of laughter, the dreams of freedom, the love that binds us. With every stride, every beat of hooves against the unforgiving ground, we become more than mere soldiers. We are a force, a tempest of emotion, a swirling storm of dreams and despair. And even as the shadows loom, we press on, for in the heart of the storm, there are glimpses of the light that await beyond the chaos, a promise of a new dawn, if only we can endure. And as the clash of metal and the cries of war swirl around us, I realize that our journey is far from over, it's merely the beginning of a tale that will echo in the hearts of those who dare to dream, a narrative woven into the very fabric of our souls. We are the war horses, the cavalry's backbone, and in this dance of fate, we find our strength not in the fight alone but in the bonds that refuse to break. The ground trembles beneath me, a rhythmic pounding echoing in my chest like a war drum. Dust swirls in the air, thick and choking, as the distant cries of men merge with the thunderous approach of a force unmatched in its ferocity. I can feel it, almost taste it, the electricity crackling around us, a wildfire of impending chaos. I glance up, and there they are, colossal silhouettes against the murky horizon, elephants, the very embodiment of nature's raw power, lumbering forth like ancient tanks on a battlefield soaked in history and blood. Their eyes glint with a fierce intelligence, a haunting depth that mirrors my own turmoil. I remember the stories, the legends whispered in the dark corners of taverns, tales of these majestic beasts trampling over foes, crushing hope beneath their massive feet. But the ground is not the only thing quaking today, my heart races, caught in a tempest of fear and awe. I am not merely an observer, I am a soldier in this maelstrom, and my destiny is inextricably woven with these behemoths. Arjun stands beside me, his face a mask of conflict. I can see it in the set of his jaw, the way his fingers twitch, a soldier torn between duty and horror. He once swore allegiance to his king, his voice ringing with fervor as he declared his loyalty. For honor, for glory, he had shouted, full of youthful bravado, but here in this moment, surrounded by a cacophony of despair and sacrifice, those words feel like a mockery. He looks at the elephants, his eyes glistening with unshed tears, and I know he remembers the days he spent in the village, watching the elephants parade, innocent against the backdrop of joy. Now, they march not as symbols of celebration but as instruments of destruction. Do you think they realize, he whispers, as if the elephants could hear him. Do you think they know what we do to each other? Before I can answer, the first elephant raises its trunk, the shriek of war piercing the air. It's a sound that reverberates through my bones and rattles my sanity. The ground shakes, not just from their weight but from the weight of history they carry, of battles won and lost, of men carved into legends or forgotten in the annals of time. Each step forward feels like a reminder of the choices that brought us here, choices that gnaw at my conscience like a relentless spectre. Beside us, Amina clutches a frayed banner, its colors faded and torn, a remnant of a cause we once believed in. Her face is pale, framed by hair that flickers like shadows in the dim light. I can see her resolve wavering, the flicker of hope extinguished under the enormity of this confrontation. They're not just animals, she murmurs, her voice cracking. They're part of the cycle, a reminder of what we've lost. As the elephants charge, I am struck by their grace, their power. They are not mere beasts of burden or war, they are ancient spirits, guardians of a forgotten age. I remember the tales of their wisdom, of their ability to mourn, to remember those they have lost. Here, in this battleground, they bear witness to our folly, our relentless quest for power. My heart stirs with the weight of empathy as I watch them, and I can't help but think, are we fighting against them, or against the very nature of existence itself? The clash begins, a cacophony of chaos and desperation. Men scream, arrows rain down like a storm, and I find myself paralyzed, caught in the crossfire of loyalty and humanity. I watch Arjun lurch forward, weapon raised, his determination battling against his doubt. He charges, heart pounding, eyes wild, a man transformed. In his desperation, I see the reflection of every soldier who has ever stood on the brink of warfare, caught between the ideals of honor and the horror of reality. Arjun, wait! I shout, but my voice is swallowed by the roar of the elephants, the sound like thunderclaps rolling across the sky. A massive creature, tusks gleaming like sharpened swords, barrels forward, and in that moment, time suspends. It is a breath held in the universe, a heartbeat caught between life and death. I can see Arjun's face, twisted in terror and exhilaration, as he confronts the beast head-on. There's a sickening crack as he collides with its side, a fleeting moment of courage crushed beneath its weight. Stop! Please! Amina screams, her voice raw, torn from her throat. I feel the anguish radiate from her, the love she has for him, the despair blooming like a dark flower in her chest. It is in this moment that the battlefield transforms, not just a clash of weapons, but a reckoning of souls, a reminder of what we are able to lose. The elephants, those ancient tanks, they do not see the lines we draw, the colors we wave. They see only life, the violent dance of existence, of birth and destruction. I remember the silence that follows, a stillness that feels like a gasp, the world holding its breath as if waiting for the outcome of this turmoil. In that eerie quiet, I see the truth: these elephants are not our enemies. They are the keepers of memories, the guardians of a world that crumbles beneath our greed. I watch them pause, their massive bodies heaving as they survey the destruction around them. It is in their gaze that I find my own reflection, a question swirling in the depths of those ancient eyes: who are we in this eternal cycle of life and death? And then, the moment fractures, splintering like glass underfoot. The battle rages on, but I am lost, swept away in a tide of emotion. I am haunted by the ghosts of those who've come before, by warriors lost, by the weight of honor and sacrifice. The elephants, those ancient tanks, they march on, and I can only hope that amidst the chaos, amidst the fear and heartbreak, we can learn to see beyond our own destruction. I can feel it, a shift in the air, a reminder that even in our darkest hours, we are still connected, not just to each other but to every living thing that walks this earth. Their march continues, powerful and eternal, as I stand still, caught in the gravity of this moment, a soldier, a witness, a soul entwined in the tapestry of existence. The howl of a distant wolf pierced the stillness of the night, sharp as a knife, a harbinger of chaos. I stood among the shadows, the cool earth beneath my feet echoing the pulse of a heart racing with dread. The air trembled, thick with the scent of smoke and blood, an intoxicating cocktail of fear and adrenaline. This was war, this was my life now. I remember the day I met Magnus, the beast with a heart as wild as the storm that brewed over the battlefield. He was a stray, eyes glowing with defiance, fur knotted like the memories of the fallen. I had thought I could tame him, mold him into a companion who would follow me into battle without question. But I was wrong. Magnus was a soldier, he cared not for human orders, but for loyalty that ran far deeper, a bond forged in shared suffering. In the chaos of that night, as the echoes of clashing swords and the cries of the wounded filled the air like a macabre symphony, I felt his presence beside me. He moved with grace, a blur of muscle and instinct, and in that moment, I was not alone. He was more than a dog, he was a shadow, a spirit that danced on the edge of life and death. "Stay close, boy," I whispered, though my voice was lost to the roar of war. The ground shook as the enemy advanced, a tide of steel and ferocity. I gripped my sword tighter, feeling the weight of my own fears. Would I survive this? Would Magnus? I could hear the thunder of hooves, the cries for blood, and I hated that I had dragged my faithful companion into this madness. Then there was Ilara. A woman forged in the fires of conflict, her spirit unyielding as the mountains themselves. She was a healer, but here, in the heart of battle, she wielded more than just herbs and salves, she carried the weight of hope on her shoulders. I watched her move among the fallen, her hand stained crimson, whispering words of comfort that mingled with the stench of death. I remember the way she looked at me, eyes fierce like twin stars, as if she could see into the depths of my soul. "We fight not just for ourselves," she said, voice steady amidst the storm, "but for those who cannot." Her words tethered me to a reality that felt like a dream, a surreal dance of life and loss. I could not let her down. The fire in her gaze burned through the suffocating fog of despair that threatened to consume me. It whispered promises of survival, of redemption, and I clung to it like a lifeline. But how could I protect her when the world around us crumbled? The clash of steel drew me back, sharp and unforgiving. I plunged into the fray, heart pounding like a war drum. Every swing of my sword was a desperate plea for life, every roar of the enemy fueled a primal fear deep within me. I fought not just for victory but against the haunting memories of all I had lost, a brother, a friend, a piece of myself left behind on distant battlefields. Magnus surged forward, a blur of fury, teeth bared, fearless. I watched as he tore into an enemy soldier, a savage ballet of instinct and ferocity. The man fell with a cry, eyes wide with shock, and in that split second, I felt a dark satisfaction, a surge of power that coursed through me like lightning. But it twisted in my gut, a reminder of the thin line we walked between saviors and monsters. Ilara's voice broke through the cacophony, a scream that pierced the night, more potent than any blade. My heart lurched. I turned, desperation curling in my chest, and found her struggling against two attackers. Fear clawed at my throat, and I fought my way through the mass of bodies, every step a battle against a tide of despair that threatened to sweep us all away. "Hold on!" I shouted, but the words felt hollow against the backdrop of chaos. I could see her eyes, wide and terrified, reflecting the flame of a fire that was too close, too dangerous. My heart thundered as I lunged forward, blade raised, the world around me a blur of fiery shadows and ghostly figures. In that moment, time stretched, and I could feel the weight of the cosmos pressing down on me. The cries of the fallen became a haunting melody, a dirge for those who had come before. I was a piece of a vast tapestry, woven with threads of loss and sacrifice. I remember the night sky, stars hidden behind dark clouds, a reminder of the light we fought to preserve, the lives that depended on our survival. With a primal roar, Magnus leapt into the fray, a blur of fur and fury, and the attackers faltered, momentarily distracted by the beast that was more than a mere dog. I seized the moment, striking with purpose, and the blade found its mark. The man collapsed, eyes wide with disbelief, and in that instant, I felt the weight of my actions, a burden and a relief, an echo of all we had lost and all we stood to fight for. Ilara's gaze locked with mine, a mixture of gratitude and fear. "We can't stop," she breathed, the fire reflecting in her eyes. "They aren't done yet." And as I looked into the darkness, I knew she was right. The war was a relentless monster, ever hungry for souls, and we were just pawns in its cruel game. But together we would fight, not just as allies, but as a family entwined in the madness of it all. I could feel Magnus at my side, an unyielding spirit that refused to back down. "Then let's finish this," I replied, the words heavy with resolve. The howl of the wolf echoed again, a chilling reminder of what lay ahead, but we stood as one, warriors bound by blood and fury, allies ready to face the darkness that loomed. The night had only just begun, and the battle was far from over. The sun hung low, a molten orb spilling crimson across the horizon. The air was thick, stifling, as if time itself dared not breathe. I stood in the dying light, the ground trembling beneath the weight of 2,000 years of conflict. Shadows loomed, long and jagged, scratching at the edges of my memory. In the distance, the low rumble of hooves merged with the soft, rhythmic plodding of camels, silent carriers of stories untold. A dust storm danced on the horizon, swirling like the ghosts of lost souls, wrapping their yearning arms around the parched earth. There was a tension in that air, a palpable whisper of dread and anticipation. I could feel it in my bones. I remembered the stories my grandfather told, tales of warriors and conquests, of the unsung heroes of the desert, those camels, silent yet steadfast, carrying both supplies and sorrow through sand stained with blood. Nari crouched low, her heart pounding like war drums in her chest. She was a warrior, unable to forget the taste of fear that clung to her tongue. She gripped the hilt of her dagger, a lifeline in a world gone mad. The memories of the last battle haunted her, men falling around her like dry leaves in autumn, their cries echoing in her ears. She could still see the sun glinting off steel, a cruel reminder of what she had lost. "Stay close," she whispered to Ahmed, her brother, whose wide eyes mirrored the fear coursing through her own veins. He was a boy still, barely a man, but the desert had aged him, its trials etched deep lines of worry across his brow. They had been separated from their unit, stranded in desolation, with nothing but the camels, their hushed breaths and soft whimpers filling the void of despair. Each camel was more than just a beast of burden, they were their only hope. "Can you hear them?" he murmured, clutching the reins of their lead camel, his knuckles white against the dark leather. "The drums, they're calling." Nari closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her. It was the heartbeat of the desert, a mournful melody that resonated with every fiber of her being. She remembered how the elders spoke of camels as the guardians of their ancestors, the unyielding spirits of the sands. But even now, those spirits felt restless, anxious for the approaching storm, both in the sky and within their hearts. "Keep your voice down," she hissed, panic threading through her every word. "They'll hear us." But Ahmed's gaze was fixed on the horizon, where shadows bled into the twilight, twisting and curling like serpents ready to strike. He was young, too innocent for this cruel world, and yet here they were, poised on the brink of chaos. Nari felt a surge of protectiveness, a desperate need to shield him from the horrors that awaited. She couldn't let him face it alone, she couldn't lose him too. "Why?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Why do we fight? What's the point if we just end up like them?" He gestured toward the distant silhouettes of warriors, men clad in armor, their intentions cloaked in darkness, looming closer by the second. Nari's heart sank. They fought for honor, for their family, for the land that had cradled their forefathers. But it felt like a fantasy now, a whisper lost in the howling winds of fate. "We fight because we have to," she replied, though her own certainty faltered. "Because the desert remembers. Because we must carry their stories." Stories. Every grain of sand was a memory, every stone a testament to the lives lost in this relentless dance of war. The camels, with their deep-set eyes and long lashes, seemed to embody that history, their bodies swaying as they trudged forward, unfazed by the chaos surrounding them. Yet beneath that calm facade lurked an understanding, a knowing of the burden they carried. Suddenly, a sharp crack broke the air like a thunderclap, and Nari's heart leapt into her throat. The enemy was drawing closer, the drums thrumming louder, thrumming like her own blood beneath her skin. "We have to move," she shouted, urgency eclipsing the weariness that clung to her. As they bolted forward, the camels surged into action, each stride a heartbeat, each breath a prayer. The desert floor trembled beneath them as they raced toward the only sanctuary they knew, the ruins of an ancient fortress hidden in the sands. Memories of laughter and warmth flickered like distant stars. She remembered her mother's voice, soothing and steady, urging her to keep going, to seek refuge among the stones worn smooth by time. But the air thickened with a choking dread, the silence of the desert now shattered by the cries of men, their own brothers, their own kin. The realization sunk like a stone in her gut. This was not just a fight for survival, it was a fight for the very essence of who they were. "Hold on tight, Ahmed," she yelled, panic clawing at her throat. The camels, those silent sentinels, pushed through the chaos, their bodies resilient and strong as they carried their burdens into the fray. Nari felt the pulse of the desert beneath her, a beat that echoed with their resolve, an unyielding spirit that refused to be silenced. Each footfall was a declaration, each moment a reminder that in this brutal world, they would not fade into the shadows. As they neared the fortress, a flicker of hope ignited within her, a spark that refused to die. "We'll get through this," she promised, though doubts gnawed at her heart like a hungry wolf. "We'll find a way." But the gates loomed ahead, cracked and crumbling, a testament to countless battles fought over centuries. They were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting to remember, to honor those who had come before them. Camels and warriors alike, their fates intertwined against the backdrop of the unforgiving desert. And as the last rays of sunlight faded into darkness, Nari felt the weight of history crashing down around her. They were not alone, the camels stood resolute, their silent strength a balm to her fraying nerves. They moved forward, a blend of humanity and animal instinct, stepping into the unknown, where the echoes of the past awaited. Each heartbeat echoed louder, each breath a prayer carried on the winds of fate. And in that moment, as the shadows of war loomed, she understood the power of connection, the bond between warrior and beast, the silent carriers of desert warfare. Time stood still as they crossed that threshold, a promise etched in the very fabric of the cosmos, a heartbeat in the endless expanse of the desert. The night was a shroud, heavy and damp, swirling around the silhouettes of buildings that jutted into the starless sky, as if the city were a creature, breathing in shallow gasps. Thunder rolled in the distance, a low growl of the cosmos that sent shivers down Alex's spine, a reminder that the world was alive, and it was watching. He stood alone on the rooftop, the cold bite of the wind tearing at his jacket, each gust pulling him deeper into the madness that had become his life. The city below pulsed with a heartbeat of its own, siren wails, car horns, whispers of secrets carried on the wind. "I can't let them find me," he muttered, a mantra that clung to him like sweat-soaked clothes. Somewhere in the chaos, a flicker of movement caught his eye, an ominous shadow darting through the alleyways, too quick to be human. It was there, lurking just beyond the edge of his vision, a predator in a world painted by desperation. The thought sent a wave of dread crashing over him, a reminder that the enemy was not just a name scribbled in a dossier, it was a presence, the specter of fear that danced just out of reach. Footsteps echoed behind him, and he turned sharply, heart racing. Liz stepped into the dim light, her face strained yet fierce, haunted yet resolute. "We've got company," she spat, urgency dripping from her voice. She was a warrior in her own right, her eyes reflecting a storm of emotions, determination, desperation, a flicker of hope that was fighting to survive. "They're closing in." Alex felt the ground beneath him shift, the familiar pang of regret clawing at his insides. "I'm not ready," he said, half to himself. The ghosts of his past loomed large, decisions made, lives lost, the weight of choices that hung over him like an executioner's blade. Liz had always been the anchor in his chaos, but even she seemed to tremble under the weight of this night. "What's the plan?" she asked, her voice a sharp edge cutting through the thick tension. The air crackled with unspoken fears, and Alex's mind swirled with possibilities, 1,000 scenarios, each one more terrifying than the last. "I remember," he began, the fragments of memory creeping in, unbidden. "The first time I flew. The rush, it was like soaring through the very heart of the storm. But that was different. This," he choked on the words, feeling the gravity of the moment weigh down on him. "This is life or death. You're still that pilot, Alex. You just have to remember how to be one." Liz's fierce gaze pulled him back from the precipice of despair, igniting a flicker of something deep within him. But as the shadows shifted and danced, he wondered if he could ever reclaim that version of himself, the one who soared like a bird of prey, the one who hunted for truth, for justice, for safety. A distant sound pierced the night, a low, ominous drone that thrummed through the very fabric of the air, a reminder that they were not alone. It throbbed like a heartbeat, a mechanical beast prowling the skies, searching. "They're coming," he whispered, the reality of their situation crashing down like a tidal wave. Liz's hand shot out, gripping his wrist like a vice. "No more running," she breathed, determination burning in her eyes. "We fight. We're not their prey. Not tonight." In that moment, Alex felt the shift, something primal surged within him, awakening the instincts that had been dulled by fear and regret. "Let's do this." The words tasted like fire, igniting a blaze of defiance that chased away the shadows. They slipped through the darkness, feet pounding against the pavement, hearts thrumming in sync. Each step was a battle cry, echoing through the alleys like a promise, they would not back down. The city transformed around them, a labyrinth of danger and despair, but they were not victims, they were warriors, ready to reclaim their night. As they turned a corner, a flicker of movement caught Alex's eye. A flash of metal, glinting in the sliver of moonlight. "Duck," he shouted, adrenaline surging through his veins. A shot rang out, a crack that shattered the quiet night, leaving only the echo of gunfire hanging in the air like a ghost. Liz fell to the ground beside him, her breath quick and shallow. "We need cover." Her voice was fierce but laced with fear, and Alex felt the weight of her reliance on him crash down. The stakes had never been higher. This was not just about survival, it was about redemption, about reclaiming the parts of themselves they had lost in the chaos of war. They scrambled behind a rusty dumpster, hearts racing, the metallic tang of fear mixing with the stench of refuse. "I can't die like this," he thought, biting back the tide of hopelessness. Memories of his son danced at the edge of his consciousness, a haunting reminder of what was at stake. I need to make it home. Liz pressed close, her breath hot against his ear. We can't let them win, she whispered, her eyes fierce and unwavering. Not now. Not when it matters most. Right, he breathed, the weight of her words sinking into him. They were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for every moment, every joy, every laugh that had once filled their lives. They were fighting for a future that threatened to slip through their fingers like sand. As the footsteps drew nearer, each thud resonating like a drumbeat of doom, Alex realized they were standing at the precipice of something greater, a confrontation that would demand everything they had. The air thickened with tension, shadows looming closer, the darkness hungry for its prey. On three, he whispered, his heart pounding in time with the footsteps. 1, 2, and in that moment, as they prepared to unleash all their fury against the encroaching darkness, the city around them transformed. It became a battlefield, a tapestry woven with courage and fear, heartbreak and determination. They would rise, birds of prey soaring through the storm, each flap of their wings a defiance against the night. 3. And they burst forth into the chaos, ready to reclaim their fate. The night had become alive, and the hunt was on. A thunderous crash reverberated across the fields, a sound that split the very air like a bolt of lightning. It felt alive, each pulse echoing through the veins of the earth. I stood frozen, watching as the bull, a dark beast with glimmering muscles and a ferocity that seemed to ignite the twilight, vaulted over the wooden fence, a living embodiment of chaos and power. My heart thundered in my chest, each beat a silent prayer for survival. I remember the vividness of that moment, the way the sun hung low in the sky, casting long, sinister shadows that twisted like specters across the ground. The air was thick with tension, a palpable electricity that crackled just beneath the surface. That was the night everything changed, the night the darkness seeped into the very marrow of our lives. Mark stood beside me, his face a mask of fear and determination. Once, he was a gentle soul, a farmer whose touch could coax life from the parched earth. But now, his hands trembled as he gripped the fence, knuckles white, eyes wide. "We have to get him back," he gasped, the words barely escaping his throat. There was desperation in his voice, a wildness that mirrored the bull's own rage. I could see the conflict tearing at him, the man who loved animals pitted against the farmer who needed to protect his livelihood. "Mark, he'll kill you," I whispered, my voice a threadbare warning woven through the chaos. The beast snorted, steam rising from its nostrils like a spectre escaping the underworld. It pawed the ground, and I felt the earth tremble with its fury. I had known that bull well, its loyalty, its fierce spirit, the way it could bring both life and devastation in a single, thunderous heartbeat. But that night, it wasn't just a bull. It was a symbol of everything that was spiraling out of control, of dreams turned to dust, of hope crushed like a fragile flower underfoot. Mark had poured his heart into this farm, had risked everything to keep it alive. But now, as the shadows deepened, I could see the cracks in his resolve. "I have to try," he said, his voice a gravelly whisper that spoke of love and despair all at once. "I can't let him ruin everything." I watched as he moved forward, an act of bravery that felt more like madness, the line between courage and foolishness blurring beneath the weight of his desperation. I remember the moment he crossed into the pen, the bull's eyes locking onto him like twin orbs of fury. In that heartbeat, I could feel the world hold its breath, the air thick with a dread that wrapped around both of us, squeezing tighter and tighter. My heart raced, a drumbeat of terror. Would Mark tame the wild beast or become just another casualty in a story we could never tell? The bull charged, a cascade of muscle and menace. Time slowed, and for a moment, I was transported back to a simpler time, when laughter echoed across the fields, when the world felt safe and filled with possibility. But those days were ghosts now, fading into the shadows as Mark stood resolute, a lone figure against the tempest. I could see the fear in his eyes, and I wished I could reach out, hold him back, but my feet felt like they were sunk in quicksand. And then, there was a shift, a moment that seemed suspended in a universe that teetered on the edge of chaos. I saw something in Mark's face, a fierceness, a flicker of the man he used to be. The man I believed would always find a way. "Come on, boy," he called, voice steady despite the quaking ground. The bull hesitated, muscles coiling, breath coming in sharp snorts. I could feel my own breath shallow, heart slamming in my chest as I willed Mark to retreat, to listen to the whispering instinct that urged him to flee. But that bull was a mirror to Mark's own tumult, a reflection of pride, rage, and the burning desire to conquer the insurmountable. The collision of their will felt like a cosmic event, two forces spiraling toward one another, and I was just a bystander, watching the universe unfold. I remember the smell of sweat and earth, the taste of fear on my tongue as I braced myself for the inevitable. My mind raced with thoughts, the memories of my father in the barn, the way he laughed while mending a broken fence, the stories he told about the strength of these creatures, the way they once symbolized survival, companionship. But that night, they felt like harbingers of doom, their power twisted into something dark and unknowable. Mark reached out, fingers brushing a slick, glistening forehead, and the bull paused, as if caught in a moment of delicate balance. It was a heartbeat of peace in a storm, a breath drawn before the plunge. But the stillness shattered. The bull's instincts kicked in like a thunderstorm boiling over, and it surged forward, a force of nature unleashed. I screamed, a sound wrenched from the depths of my soul, but it felt like a whisper against the roaring tide. Mark faltered, and in that instant, my heart plummeted into the abyss. The world erupted into chaos. The earth shook, a symphony of fear and fury. I could taste the metallic tang of adrenaline on my tongue as I lunged forward, desperate to pull him back, to shield him from the reckoning. But as I reached for him, I felt the weight of inevitability, a gut-wrenching realization that some battles are not fought with strength, but with surrender. I remember everything in fragments now, the desperate shouts, the piercing cries, the haunting darkness that swallowed the horizon. The bull became a blur, a shadow racing toward its destiny, and in that moment, I was both terrified and exhilarated, caught in the web of life and death, witnessing the raw power of the horned beast. And just like that, in the maelstrom of chaos, I felt something shift within me. The realization that we are all bound by the earth, tethered to the wild things that roam it, a connection as old as time. The power of the horned beast was not just a reflection of our fears, but a reminder of our strength to confront the storm, to rise or fall in its wake. The moon hung high, a silent witness to our struggle, casting an eerie glow over the scene as I grasped the fleeting threads of hope. I could see the bull's rage, but I also saw something else, an untamed beauty in its fury, a primal force that echoed through the ages. It was a force that called to me, whispering secrets of resilience and heartbreak, and I knew then that the battle was far from over. With the shadows closing in, I felt the weight of time pressing against my chest, the stars above a distant reminder of the cosmos we were all part of. This moment would stretch endlessly, a haunting echo of life and death, of dreams and despair. There would be no conclusions, no neat resolutions, just the unrelenting pulse of existence, the powerful rhythm of bulls and cattle, the horned beasts that roam our souls. The air crackled with tension, sharp as the hiss of a serpent poised to strike. In the dim light of the moon, shadows twisted like the thoughts racing through my mind, and I could feel the fluttering panic in my chest. A dark figure loomed ahead, cloaked in the mystery of the night. It was Marcus, his face a mask of desperation, eyes wide and frantic, a man on the verge of an abyss. Behind him stood the snake, a viper, its scales glistening, a venomous whisper of death that seemed to understand the gravity of the moment better than he did. "I can't do this," Marcus said, his voice trembling. "They're coming for us, and I can't." The words hung heavy in the night, like the scent of damp earth before a storm. I watched him, torn between loyalty and fear. I remembered his laughter, bright and infectious, a boy's spirit trapped in this man's body, fighting against the suffocating weight of choices not his own. But now, that laughter had turned to ash. Memories of simpler days slithered away, leaving just the raw pulse of survival. I was no better. Maria, the solitary shadow at Marcus's side, was bound to him like a ghost. My heart raced, not just for the peril surrounding us, but for the bond, the unbreakable thread woven through our shared despair. I could see her trembling fingers, reaching toward the snake with both terror and wonder, fascinated by the power it held. "It's the only way," Maria said, her voice barely a whisper. "We can use its venom against them." The darkness of her words slithered into my thoughts, wrapping around my mind like the constricting coils of a serpent. I wanted to scream, to shake her from whatever madness had possessed her. The viper hissed, a warning and a promise. In that moment, the world narrowed down to the sharp edge of desperation, the three of us caught in a web of betrayal and loyalties, hopes tangled like the roots of an ancient tree. I remember the day we first stumbled upon the snake. The sun was a fierce orb, burning the earth beneath our feet. We had been children, laughing, exploring the lush valley that whispered secrets of a forgotten time. The snake had glided through the grass, a flash of emerald and darkness, and we had all recoiled, hearts racing with a mix of fear and thrill. "It's beautiful!" Marcus had exclaimed, eyes wide with childlike wonder. Even then, I could see the shadows flickering behind his laughter, the fear that lingered like a distant storm. Now, that beauty had turned into a weapon, an instrument of our survival, or our doom. "What are we even doing?" I asked, my voice cracking under the weight of the moment. "Is this really the only way?" "Our enemies don't hesitate," Marcus snapped, the desperation in his tone morphing into anger. "They wouldn't think twice about using us. So why should we hesitate?" I felt the chill of his words creep into my bones. The same chill that came with the realization that survival often demanded a price far greater than we were willing to pay. I glanced at Maria, her resolve hardening like stone. "You want to survive, don't you?" she challenged, eyes fierce and defiant. "You want to live. This is how we'll do it." I stood there, torn between the boy I had once known and the man he had become. The darkness that surrounded us felt palpable, pressing against my skin, seeping into my lungs. This wasn't just about the snake. It was about choices, about the lengths we would go to in order to protect what we loved. And in that fleeting moment, I realized love could be a venomous weapon too, one that could poison the very heart of our existence. The viper coiled tighter, its tongue flicking in and out, tasting the air saturated with our indecision. I inhaled sharply, the air thick with the scent of impending doom. It was only a matter of time before the storm unleashed itself upon us, crashing in waves of chaos and confusion. My heart pounded, a relentless drumbeat as I fought against the rising tide of panic. "Marcus, what if it doesn't work?" I whispered, every word a tremor of fear. "What if we end up worse off?" A flicker of doubt crossed his face, but he quickly masked it with steely determination. "What's worse than losing everything?" he asked, his voice strained. "Isn't that worse than risking this?" In that moment, as the weight of his question hung between us, I felt the air shift, twisting like the coils of the snake. The shadows danced with sinister glee, wrapping around our hearts and minds, reminding us that hope could be as treacherous as despair. I could see the ghosts of our pasts flickering, memories blurred by the urgency of our present. I remembered the day we'd witnessed death together, a brutal reminder of our frailty. The executioner's blade had glinted in the sun, sharp and merciless, and I had recoiled in horror as the lifeblood of innocence pooled beneath the gallows, a dark stain against the stark earth. "We're better than this," I had insisted then, but now, those words felt like echoes lost in the roaring tide of chaos. The viper struck the ground, and suddenly, the world exploded into motion. Marcus lunged forward, hands trembling, grasping at the snake, intent on claiming its venom as our salvation. I watched, frozen, heart racing against the backdrop of impending danger, as Maria stepped closer to him, drawn into the orbit of his desperation. The clash of choices was palpable, raw, and unyielding. We were spiraling, caught in a tempest of conflicting desires, fear against hope, loyalty against the instinct to flee. My breath quickened, a frantic rhythm, as I realized we were on the edge of something dark and profound. And as the viper struck, a gasp caught in my throat, I knew, this was the moment that would define us. In the flicker of a heartbeat, we would either rise from the ashes of our choices or plunge into the depths of regret. The snake was just the beginning, the real venom lay in the decisions we were about to make. The night held its breath, waiting for us to take the leap into the unknown, into the very heart of our darkest fears. The howl cuts through the night like a razor, a sharp, mournful cry that ricochets off the trees, splintering the silence into shards of raw terror. I stand frozen, heart hammering like a war drum against my ribs, the chill of the night creeping under my skin. It's a sound that gnaws at the edges of sanity, a call from the abyss, summoning something primal, something buried deep within. Shadows dance in the flickering light of the fire, a beacon against the darkness, but even its warmth feels like a lie. David, always the bravest in our group, is the first to respond. He grips his makeshift spear, a jagged piece of wood sharpened to a point, hands trembling ever so slightly. "It's just a wolf," he says, but there's a quiver in his voice that betrays him. I catch the glint of fear in his eyes, the way they dart towards the trees, scanning the blackness like a deer sensing the predator lurking close. And then there's Eliza. Oh, Eliza! The girl with laughter that could light up even the darkest corners of our world, now standing beside David, her eyes wide, reflecting the flickering flames. For a moment, I forget the wolves. I remember her smile, the way it cut through our grim reality like the dawn, pushing back the shadows. But that was before the howl shattered our fragile peace and replaced it with the weight of impending dread. I remember the stories, she whispers, her voice a fragile thread that weaves through the tension. They say wolves can smell fear. They can sense the weakness in the heart. A tremor runs through her, and I want to reach out, to assure her that we are safe, that we can survive this night. But the truth hangs in the air, heavy with foreboding. We are not safe. Not from the beasts that hunt in packs, the very embodiment of nature's unyielding cruelty. The trees sway and bend, as if whispering secrets we are too frightened to hear. I remember the tales we spun around campfires, embellished stories of supernatural beasts and their cunning ways, tales meant to thrill and chill, but now they feel more like a warning, a prophecy that looms larger than life. I can almost see their eyes glowing in the dark, predatory and calculating, a panorama of hunger and strategy unfolding in the shadows. "Stay close," I say, though my voice shakes, unsure if it's meant to reassure them or myself. As we huddle together, the fire sputters, casting long, eerie shadows that flutter like ghosts along the ground. The howling comes again, closer now, drowning out the sounds of the forest, drowning out the very essence of who we are. The air thickens with tension, a taut string ready to snap. Eliza takes a step back, her breath quickening, the dance of fear painting her cheeks a startling shade of crimson. "What if they surround us?" she asks, her voice barely above a whisper, the terror creeping into her words like an invading army. "What if they don't just want to scare us?" David straightens, a spark of defiance igniting in his chest. "They're just animals. We can fight them," he declares, the bravado clashing with the tremor in his grip. I see the churning conflict behind his eyes, a battle between the desire to protect and the very real fear that claws at his resolve. But I know the truth. Wolves are not just hunters, they are artists of psychological warfare, orchestrating chaos with every calculated move. I remember the stories of how they lure prey into a false sense of security, splitting their focus, creating doubts, turning the very essence of survival against itself. This isn't just a fight, it's a game, a deadly game. A rustle in the underbrush sends a jolt through us, the three of us frozen in a tableau of dread. Eliza's hand slips into mine, her grip vice-like, trembling with fear. I can feel her heartbeat, wild and frantic, mingling with my own. The brush snaps again, louder this time, and I turn, scanning the perimeter, searching for any sign of movement. A shadow flits past, and for a moment, just a fleeting moment, I could swear I see a pair of luminous eyes peering at us from the darkness. "Stay together," I manage to say, but the words feel like ashes in my mouth, hollow and empty. The howling rises to a chorus, and it's then that I realize, the wolves are not just hunting us, they are playing with us, turning our minds into their playground. "It's a distraction," I murmur, the words barely escaping my lips. "They're trying to split us apart." And just like that, I can feel the tension fracture. David's resolve wavers, his fear spilling out into the open. "What if we don't make it through the night?" The question hangs heavy in the air, a murky cloud of despair. Eliza's eyes flicker with a fleeting spark of defiance. "We will make it," she insists, her voice rising, a tremor of hope battling the encroaching darkness. And in that moment, I realize, her spirit is aflame, flickering but unyielding, as we all stand together at the precipice of fear and courage. But the night is far from over, and the wolves are patient. They are the masters of psychological warfare, feeding off our fears, our doubts. I can feel the chill creeping in, the whispers of the forest curling around my mind, intertwining with memories of laughter and camaraderie, memories that feel as distant as stars in a forgotten sky. The weight of the cosmos presses upon us, and the darkness feels alive, breathing, waiting. I remember the moments we spent laughing under the sun, carefree and oblivious. Now, the night stretches endlessly ahead of us, a void filled with uncertainty and primal instincts. I glance at Eliza, her face pale but resolute, and I realize that the battle isn't just against the wolves. It's against ourselves, our fears, our doubts. The fight for survival is as much a mental war as it is a physical one. And as the howl comes again, echoing off the walls of our despair, I know we must stand our ground. The wolves are coming, and they will not just hunt our bodies, they will seek to dismantle our very souls. The stench was the first thing I noticed, a pungent mix of decay and desperation, lingering in the damp air like a ghost that refused to leave. I stood in the cobbled square, the stone chill seeping into my bones, the echoes of distant screams punctuating the silence. Each pulse of sound was a reminder, this was no ordinary day in the city. This was the beginning of the end. "Stay close," Ilara whispered, her voice barely a thread above the chaos, her fingers entwined with mine. Her grip was tight, almost desperate, and I could feel the tremor in her hand. Fear had become our constant companion, a shadow that clung to our every step. The sun hung low, a bruised orb in the murky sky, casting an eerie glow that made the cobblestones shimmer like wet flesh. "They say it's the rats. They're spreading it." The thought made my stomach churn. I remembered the tales, how the rats scurried through the alleys, their beady eyes glinting with something unholy, their fur matted with the remnants of the city's filth. Each twitch of their tails seemed to mock us, taunting our futile attempts to escape the inevitable. "Rats," I murmured, feeling a shiver dance along my spine. "They bathe once a year, so yeah, romance was earthy." I had to laugh, but it came out as a strangled note. The absurdity of the situation, the plague, the panic, the whispers of biological warfare, was almost a comfort in its ridiculousness. Across the square, Thomas stood, a silhouette against the dying light, his shoulders hunched. He was a soldier, though the weight of his uniform felt less like armor and more like a shroud. I saw the way he stared into the distance, as if seeking answers from the sky, as if the heavens might spare him from the horrors plaguing our streets. But there were no answers here, only the unrelenting march of time and death. "Thomas," I called, my voice breaking. He turned, his eyes hollow, like black wells that pulled me in. "They're saying it's the rats. They carry the plague." I wanted to reach out, to bridge the gap between us, but something held me back. An unspeakable fear, a recognition of our shared fate. The world was crumbling, and we were tethered to it by fragile strings. "Let them come," he replied, his tone heavy with resignation. "We're all dead men walking anyway." His bravado was a thin veil, barely concealing the panic that lurked beneath. I knew he would fight, he had always fought, but the fight felt different now, as if the enemy had teeth and claws, hidden in shadows and crevices. The shadows seemed to stretch, reaching for us, engulfing the square in a suffocating embrace. My heart raced. I remembered stories from the elders, tales of the Black Death that swept through the land, leaving only silence in its wake. The specter of it loomed close, a ghost of history now, waiting to claim us. "Ilara," I said, and the name fell from my lips like a prayer. "If it comes, if the rats bring it," I faltered, the words thick in my throat. "Don't," she interrupted, her eyes fierce, defying the darkness creeping in. "We can't think like that. We must find safety." But deep down, I could see the cracks in her resolve. We both knew how futile our search would be, how safety was an illusion, a fleeting dream in the face of a nightmare. As we moved through alleys that whispered and creaked, the shadows danced, taunting us. I could hear the scuttling, that awful scratching sound that made my skin crawl. Every flurry of fur sent my heart racing, every flicker of movement sending us into a spiral of dread. Were they watching us? The rats? Or worse, the very plague we feared. Suddenly, a shriek pierced the air, raw and primal, the sound of a woman, a mother, losing her child to the claws of disease. It shattered the fragile calm that had settled around us, leaving only the echo of her agony. I found myself frozen, rooted in place, while Elara's grip tightened around my hand, her nails digging into my skin. "Run!" Thomas shouted, voice laced with urgency, and we bolted, instinct taking over. We ducked into a narrow lane, the walls closing in, the air thickening with each desperate breath. The world outside was chaos, but here, in this moment, it was just us and the ever-looming dread of the unknown. I remember the weight of Elara's sadness, the way her eyes glistened like dew on grass, caught between hope and despair. "I should have listened to my mother," she muttered, almost to herself. She warned me about the rats, her voice trailed off, the weight of her memories heavy in the air, suffocating. The echoes of the past clashed with the present, intertwining like the threads of a macabre tapestry. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown, each breath, a reminder of what was at stake. Time slipped through our fingers like sand, each grain a reminder of the lives lived, lost, and irrevocably changed. In the corner of my mind, I felt a flicker of rage, a fury directed not at the rats, but at the world that allowed this to happen. A world that turned a blind eye while chaos reigned. I glanced at Thomas, seeing a similar fire smoldering in his eyes, igniting a fleeting connection between us. But before we could share that moment, before we could acknowledge the flickering humanity left in our hearts, the screeching came again, close, too close. An avalanche of fur flooded the alley, 1,000 beady eyes glinting in the dim light. They came, a wave of life squirming toward us, the embodiment of our worst fears. And in that moment, as the shadows closed in, I realized we weren't just fighting for survival. We were fighting for the remnants of who we were, for the fragile flickers of hope that still flickered in the darkness. Each heartbeat echoed with that truth, a reminder that despite the encroaching plague, we were still alive, still breathing, still human. And even as the rats surged forward, a creeping darkness threatening to snuff out the last remnants of light, I held onto Elara's hand tighter than ever. For in that grasp, I felt the warmth of life, the pulse of defiance. A heartbeat against the tide of despair. A heartbeat that dared to dream, even in the face of oblivion. A low hum droned in the air, the sound swelling like a gathering storm. I could feel it, thrumming beneath my skin, a visceral tension that set my heart racing. The sun hung low, casting long shadows that crept like fingers across the ground, where a lone figure stood, trembling. Alex, his eyes wide with the raw horror of the moment, gripped a makeshift weapon, a stick that seemed more symbolic than practical. Behind him, the garden, once a sanctuary of color and life, buzzed with a different kind of energy, one that made the hairs on my neck stand on end. "Do you hear that?" he whispered, dread spilling from his voice. His breath quickened, and I could see it, the flicker of fear dancing in his gaze. I nodded, knowing full well that the words would hang heavy between us. They were coming. I could only think of Clara, her laughter mingling with the sweet scent of honeysuckle, now dulled to a memory. The garden, once alive with her spirit, seemed to hold its breath. I could still picture her, eyes sparkling as she danced among the blooms, blissfully unaware of the darkness that loomed just beyond the edges of our joy. But now, that laughter was a ghost, and the air was thick with an impending dread. 1,000 tiny wings sliced through the silence, a shrill war cry rising in pitch as the swarm descended from above. My heart pounded, each beat a drum echoing the primal instinct to flee. But there was no escape, not when the hive had been disturbed, not when the fury of nature was unleashed. "Stay close!" I yelled, though my voice was swallowed by the chaos. The world around us blurred into a frenzied dance of black and gold, a storm of fury that knew no mercy. Wasps, angry and relentless, swarmed like an avenging army, a force of nature with a singular purpose. Fear coursed through me as I pulled Alex closer, our bodies huddled together, two souls against a sea of rage. "Why are they doing this?" he cried out, panic lacing his words, but there was no time to answer. The buzzing intensified, reverberating in my bones. I wanted to tell him that they felt threatened, that their family was under siege, that they were fighting for survival, but the truth felt too heavy, too cruel in that moment. I remembered my childhood, the way I'd chased butterflies, mesmerized by their delicate beauty, but this was a different world. Here, there were no gentle caresses, only the instinctual drive to protect what was theirs. And in that moment, I understood, they were not the villains. They were warriors, fighting, and I could feel the weight of their struggle. In the midst of the turmoil, I caught sight of Clara's forgotten sun hat, fluttering in the breeze like a lost spirit, drifting further into the chaos. I felt a pang, like a knife twisting in my chest. How could I save her laughter, her spirit, when all around us was destruction? I wanted to reach out, to grasp that hat and pull her back into the moment, to remind her of the joy, but it was too late. The swarm was upon us, a living, buzzing mass of fury and desperation, and my mind raced with memories of the soft, sweet hum of a bee, a gentle reminder of life and sweetness, now turned into a haunting cacophony. Run! My voice cracked, barely rising above the sound of wings and anger. In that moment, we were not just two people facing an immediate threat, we were a part of something ancient, something primal, a battle in the tapestry of existence, woven through eons. I felt the world shift, the air thick with desperation, as we turned to flee, hearts racing like wild stallions. But it was not just the fear that consumed us, it was the realization that something beautiful was now a terrifying force. We were mere spectators in a war we had ignited, a single misstep had unleashed chaos, and the garden, once a place of solace, had transformed into a battleground where lives hung in the balance. With each agonizing moment, time seemed to stretch. I could almost hear the whispers of history, the battles fought over territory, the survival instincts of the smallest creatures, the relentless fight for existence. There was pain in that realization, a deep connection to the world around us, a reminder that even the smallest beings can wield incredible power. "Alex!" I shouted, breaking through the chaos of our racing thoughts. "We can't let them win. We have to stand our ground." He hesitated, fear twisting his features, but then I saw something shift in his eyes, a flicker of resolve. I grabbed his hand, and together we stepped back into the fray, determination igniting our spirits. With every pulse of the swarm, with every angry buzz, I felt the desperate energy of the bees and wasps, their fight mirrored in our own. The air was electric, heavy with tension as we moved in tandem, battling not just against the swarm but against our own fears. The world melted away, replaced by the raw intensity of the moment, a visceral reminder that life, in all its beauty, could twist into chaos in an instant. My heart thundered as I swung the stick, the motion more symbolic than effective, yet it felt powerful. We were fighting for our right to exist, just as they were. And in that instant, I felt the poignant weight of connection, the understanding that we were not just battling insects, but each other, and ourselves. The swarm surged forward, and I felt the first sting, sharp, searing like a bolt of lightning. I gasped, the pain igniting a fire within me, a reminder of the stakes. Each pulse of venom was a reminder that survival came at a cost, and my body was a canvas, painted with the very essence of nature's fury. Yet amidst the pain, I felt alive, truly alive. The world swirled in chaos, but within the storm, I glimpsed something profound, the beauty of existence, the raw essence of life, the unyielding spirit that drives us all. And as we fought, sweat mingling with fear, I realized this was not the end. This was a beginning, a fierce testament to resilience, echoing through the ages like a battle cry. As the swarm ebbed and flowed like a tide, I clung to that realization, our shared heartbeat echoing through the chaos. Together, we were a force, flawed, trembling, courageous. And in the haunting buzz that surrounded us, I found clarity. This was our moment. No, we wouldn't flee from it. We would embrace it, raw and unfiltered, just as life intended. And as we stood, shoulder to shoulder against the storm, I couldn't help but wonder, could we, too, learn to swarm, to fight, to rise up against the chaos? Could we become warriors of our own hearts, battling the shadows that lurked just beyond the light? The answer lay before us, woven in the fabric of the moment, as the world spiraled into a whirl of wings and whispers. The night hung thick over the besieged castle of Montclair, the air heavy with dread and the faint, sickle-sweet scent of burnt flesh. I remember how the darkness wrapped around us like a shroud, a tapestry woven with shadows and unspoken fears. The distant echoes of laughter now felt like ghosts mocking us, a haunting reminder of what we had become. Outside the walls, the enemy circled like vultures, their hunger palpable, but inside, we were crumbling in our own madness. Just give it a little push. Henri shouted, his face a mask of desperation and grime. The pig, an enormous, snorting beast named Goliath, squirmed in the makeshift pen, oblivious to the chaos unfolding around him. We'd chosen him for his bulk, his strength. He was an unconventional weapon, but then again, so were we. What was left of our sanity? What was left of us? The castle's wooden walls trembled as another volley of rocks rained down. I could feel the vibrations in my bones, an ominous heartbeat pulsing through this demonic theater of war. This was siege warfare, but our arsenal was unconventional. Pigs were our last hope. They were not just livestock, they were symbols of desperation, the dark humor of our plight. The enemy had grown wise to our defenses, but they could never expect the use of swine. I was not a soldier. I was a historian, a lover of dusty tomes and ancient scrolls, yet here I stood, desperate and dirty, cradling Goliath's wrinkled snout. I could hear the laughter of the soldiers outside, a cruel mockery of our situation. They must have found it amusing to see scholars and scribes resorting to swine, to the absurdity of this moment. But our pain was theirs to bear as well, we all felt the weight of this siege. Hold him steady. Just a little more, Henri urged, sweat pouring down his brow, mingling with the dirt and blood that painted his face. He was a soldier, but even he felt the absurdity of this mission, using a pig to breach enemy lines, to send a message wrapped in the grotesque. I could see the internal struggle in his eyes, he was torn between duty and the haunting realization that we were losing ourselves. Goliath let out a loud grunt as Henri maneuvered him toward the castle's gates, the wooden beams creaking in protest. In those fleeting moments, I caught glimpses of my comrades, men who once spoke of valor and honor, now reduced to this, sacrificing their dignity for survival. I felt the tremor of their souls, the way they clung to hope as if it were a lifeline, yet every heartbeat echoed the inevitability of our doom. Remember what they said about pigs. I murmured, the words spilling from my lips, a desperate attempt to cling to some semblance of humanity. They can smell fear. They can sense death. My voice cracked, and I realized I was not just speaking to Henri, I was trying to convince myself. The truth lay heavy in the air, thick as the smoke of dying embers. We were all afraid, haunted by the specters of our own choices. Shut up! Henri barked, his eyes wild, as if my words had summoned the demons lurking just beyond the castle walls. I fell silent, the weight of his anger mixing with my own dread. Goliath was ready, the enemy would never see him coming, and yet, in that moment, I felt a flicker of hope. What if we succeeded? What if this grotesque plan worked? But hope was a fragile thing, easily crushed under the weight of reality. The enemy would retaliate. They would not allow us the dignity of victory, even in this absurd endeavor. I could see their shadows moving in the distance, a monstrous army of despair, and my heart raced with fear. I remember the stories we used to tell, tales of brave knights and noble causes. They seemed so distant, so far removed from this pig-laden nightmare. Clocks ticked in my mind, reminding me of time slipping away faster than arrows flying through the night. The absurdity of our situation clawed at my throat, but the laughter of my fellow soldiers echoed in my ears. They were clinging to their own stories, selling bits of their sanity for a chance at survival. As we pushed Goliath toward the gates, the tension thickened, twisting around us like the vines of a cursed forest. The crack of wood echoed as we moved, a rhythmic drumbeat of impending doom. I could almost hear the whispers of our ancestors, the ghosts of warriors long gone, urging us on, but their voices were drowned out by the frantic pounding of my heart. Just one more shove, Goliath! Henri shouted, determination etched on his face, a wild gleam in his eyes. But I saw the flicker of doubt there too, it was a light struggling against the darkness closing in. We can do this. We'll break their defenses. The pig snorted again, and I swore I could see a flicker of understanding in his dark eyes, the wisdom of instinct cutting through the chaos. It struck me then, how ridiculous we all were, caught in this dance of death, orchestrated by fate and wrapped in the absurdity of our choices. With one final push, Goliath surged forward, a living battering ram against the wooden gates. Yet, as I watched him charge, I felt the world slow, and time stretched into an unending moment. I could sense the universe holding its breath, waiting for that one pivotal moment, a clash of wood splintering, a battle of wills, of humanity versus the absurdity of war. And in that heartbeat, the echo of laughter faded. Instead, there was silence, a heavy, pregnant pause, a moment pregnant with the possibility of survival or demise. I held my breath, waiting for what would come next. In that silence, everything hung precariously, as if the cosmos itself was watching, judging, waiting for our fatal or triumphant move. Time dripped with tension, and I knew, deep within, that this was just the beginning. The air crackled, heavy with the pulse of the jungle, a deafening silence before the storm. Shadows danced between the trees, each leaf hanging like a secret, and the ground trembled slightly underfoot as if the earth itself was holding its breath. I remember the moment vividly, the way the sun, a fiery orange, dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie glow that stained everything it touched. It was a warning, a prelude to chaos that no one could ignore. There they were, the monkeys, darting through the underbrush with a wild intelligence in their eyes. Clusters of them, each with a mission, each with a purpose, their nimble bodies moving like living shadows. I could hear the rustling, the chattering, the screams of excitement mingling with a hint of chaos. They were not mere creatures of the wild, they were architects of mischief, brilliant saboteurs weaving an unspoken agenda through the dense foliage. And in the midst of their orchestrated mayhem was my brother, Jonah, his heart pounding as he clutched his camera, a lifeline to his dreams. His passion for wildlife photography burned through him, a fervor that often blinded him to danger. "Just one more shot," he murmured, his eyes wide with anticipation. But the monkeys were not accommodating, their clever eyes glinting with mischief, a hint of rebellion swirling in the air. I remember the way his fingers tightened around the camera, a fragile thing in a world brimming with chaos. "Jonah, be careful!" I hissed, the words tumbling from my mouth in a frantic whisper. But he was already lost in the moment, intoxicated by the thrill of the chase, blind to the encroaching shadows of something bigger, more sinister. Nearby, perched high on a branch, was Maya, a local girl, her laughter echoing like music through the trees. She was a spark, a light in this wild tapestry, but beneath her bravado lay a wound, a scar from a past that refused to fade away. "They're just playing," she called out, her voice bright, attempting to mask the tremor that crept into her words. I knew the truth nestled behind her smile. The monkeys were not just playing, they were plotting, their small hands lifting stones and twigs, their sharp minds crafting a web of sabotage that would soon ensnare us all. Then it happened, a blur of fur and fury. One monkey leaped from the trees, and in a heartbeat, chaos erupted. Jonah shouted, the camera falling from his grip, shattering on the floor like dreams dashing against the rocks. The monkeys descended, a flurry of movement, stealing his backpack, swinging from branches, their laughter mingling with the cacophony of our panic. My heart raced. I felt the fear wrap around my throat like a vice, choking the air from my lungs. "Jonah!" I screamed, my voice caught between urgency and despair. He was frozen, eyes wide, caught in a moment that felt like an eternity. I remember the way he looked at me, a mix of confusion and heartbreak, a brother caught between the life he wanted and the wilderness that threatened to consume him. The monkeys laughed, their shrieks echoing through the canopy, a symphony of chaos that mocked our plight. "Come on!" Maya yelled, her voice sharp as a blade. "We have to go." But even she, with her fierce spirit, could feel the weight of the moment. Time slipped through our fingers, and I could see the shadows of the jungle closing in, tightening like a noose. We sprinted, adrenaline coursing through our veins, the jungle alive around us. Each rustle became a heartbeat, every shadow a lurking threat. I glanced back at Jonah, his face pale against the backdrop of green, and a surge of protectiveness swept over me. He was my brother, and I couldn't let him be swallowed by this chaos, this wildness that had become a living entity, breathing down our necks. The monkeys were relentless, darting through the trees, their laughter crackling like electricity in the humid air. They were a force of nature, cunning and relentless, and I was left with the unsettling thought that we were intruders in their world. Were they sabotaging us, or were we simply the unwitting players in a game devised long before our intrusion? "Over here!" Maya shouted, her voice slicing through the tension. We ducked beneath a sprawling banyan tree, its roots twisted and gnarled like the memories I wished I could forget. I could feel the earth pulsing beneath our feet, and the air was thick with something more than fear, an uneasy anticipation. Jonah leaned against the tree, panting, a mix of frustration and desperation etched across his face. "I just wanted to get the shot," he whispered, the weight of his words hanging heavy between us. "I didn't mean for it to go like this." "Sometimes, intentions don't matter," I replied, my voice softer now, tinged with the ache of understanding. "You can't control everything." The jungle around us felt alive, the rustling leaves whispering secrets, taunting us with the knowledge that we were mere pawns in a game we didn't understand. Then, out of the shadows, a pair of eyes glinted, a larger monkey, its gaze calculating, its posture regal. It seemed to watch us, studying our every move, a silent judge in this ongoing trial. A chill raced down my spine. This wasn't just chaos, it was strategy, a deliberate act of defiance against all that we represented. "Why are they doing this?" Jonah asked, the fear finally breaking through the bravado. "What do they want?" I had no answers, only questions that slithered like shadows in the corners of my mind. "Maybe they see us as a threat," I murmured, the weight of the truth settling in. We were invaders in their world, and this was their response, a reminder that we were not in control. And as the night deepened, the jungle transformed. The cacophony of the day faded into an eerie silence, broken only by the distant call of creatures hidden in the dark. The moon cast a ghostly light over the landscape, illuminating the tangled web of vines and roots that wove a tapestry of beauty and danger. We huddled together, hearts racing, breaths mingling in the cool night air, caught between fear and an inexplicable thrill. The monkeys, those ingenious saboteurs, watched from the shadows, their laughter now a haunting echo that would linger in our memories long after the night had faded. In that moment, I realized that this was more than a chase, it was a confrontation with something primal, something ancient. We were all just players in a game that had no beginning and no end, each heartbeat a reminder of our fragility, each breath a testament to the wildness that thrummed beneath our skin. And as I held onto my brother, the reality of our plight seeped into my bones, an unshakable truth whispering through the jungle. We were not just witnesses to the chaos, we were part of it, a thread woven into the fabric of this wild, beautiful, terrifying world. The confrontation was inevitable, but so was the bond that tied us together, the pulse of the jungle echoing our fears, our dreams, and perhaps, our salvation. The night stretched on, but I was no longer afraid. I remembered, this was only the beginning. The ocean roared, a cacophony of waves crashing against the steel hull of the ship, each surge a reminder of nature's indifference to the chaos aboard. I stood there, rigid, heart pounding like a war drum, the salty spray mingling with the sweat on my brow. To survive, we had to think like them, the fish, the shadows lurking beneath the surface, the predators that thrived in the depths. "God help us," whispered Nathan, his voice barely more than a tremor. His hands clutched the railing, knuckles white, as he peered into the abyss. Nathan was a fisherman turned sailor, a man haunted by memories of nets filled with writhing fish, innocent and alive, now replaced by the specter of war. "I can't," he started, but the words choked in his throat, swallowed by the roar of the ocean. I remembered our last night in port, laughter and warmth wrapping around us like a blanket. We'd shared stories over cheap ale, dreams of peace, of returning home. But that night felt like a distant echo now, lost in the relentless crash of reality. War had a way of stripping away illusions, leaving behind only the raw, bleeding truth. "Look!" I shouted, pointing into the darkening sea, where shadows twisted and turned, dancing just below the surface. The fish, the aquatic beings we had once revered and feared, were now a weapon, a tool of destruction. They had adapted, evolved, just as we had, but not in the way we desired. Their schools formed patterns, hypnotic and terrifying, a ballet of death choreographed by the abyss. Underwater drones, Nathan breathed, as the realization hit him. Our innovation had turned against us, the very technology we had crafted to protect now threatened our existence. The fear seeping into his voice sparked something primal within me. I wanted to scream, to rage against this twisted fate, but instead, I felt a heavy weight settle in my chest, a resignation to the horrors unfolding around us. "Prepare the torpedoes!" I bellowed, my voice cutting through the chaos. Each command filled with an urgency that echoed in my bones. I could see the look in our crew's eyes, fear and determination waging a silent war. We were all broken in our own ways, yet bound by this moment, standing on the precipice of despair. A flash of silver darted beneath the waves, glimmering like a promise, or a curse. I could feel it in my gut, a sickening twist, as the reality of our situation unfurled before me like a dark flower blossoming in the night. "We're not going to win this," I murmured, more to myself than to Nathan, who was now staring at me, eyes wide with an understanding I wished we could avoid. "Then what do we do?" he asked, voice trembling as the ship lurched beneath us, tossed by the tempest. His usual bravado crumbled, revealing the scared boy beneath the hardened exterior. "We fight," I said, though my heart quaked at the thought. I wasn't sure if I meant to fight for survival, for honor, or for something lost long before the first shot was ever fired. In that moment, I realized we were nothing more than fish caught in a net, trapped, desperate, and flailing, longing for the freedom of the deep. The alarms blared, jolting us from our thoughts, shattering the fragile silence that had encased us. The crew sprang into action, adrenaline coursing through their veins, every breath a reminder of the stakes at hand. I could feel the electricity in the air, the tension crackling like thunder just before a storm. "Brace for impact!" I yelled as a shadow loomed in the depths, monstrous and ominous, breaking the surface like a leviathan rising from the abyss. My heart raced as the creature emerged, a drone, sleek and deadly, bristling with weapons, its gaze fixed on us with a cold, mechanical hunger. It was a predatory fish of our own making, designed for war, but now it was the embodiment of our nightmares. "Fire!" The command tore from me like a desperate prayer, and I watched as the torpedoes slashed through the water, trailing smoke like a comet streaking through the night. Time seemed to stretch, each second dragging on as we held our breath, praying for a miracle, for the chains of fate to snap and free us from this torment. But in the depths below, the fish swarmed, a writhing mass of scales and teeth, a haunting reminder of what we were fighting against. They had no weapons, only instinct, but instinct was often the most ruthless killer of all. The water churned, I lost sight of our torpedoes amidst the chaos. A scream erupted from the crew, a raw, unfiltered sound that echoed in my ears, and I turned just in time to see a torrent of fish break through the surface, their bodies glistening, a beautiful yet horrifying wave of nature's wrath. "Hold steady!" Nathan's voice rang out, but it was too late. The drone's weapons fired, ripping through the air with a sound like thunder, and I felt the impact in my bones as the ship shuddered. The ocean roared back, an enraged beast, swallowing our cries, drowning our hopes. In that moment, I understood, this was the true face of warfare, a grotesque dance between man and nature, destruction and innovation entwined in a chilling embrace. I stared into the depths, where shadows whispered secrets of the past, and I felt the weight of my choices, the burden of dreams turned to nightmares. And yet, amidst the panic, the fear, I could not help but feel alive, adrenaline surging through my veins. We were not just sailors, we were part of this haunting symphony of life and death, of fish and men, a fluid battle where neither of us truly understood the rules. As the water surged around us, as the shadows loomed ever closer, I realized that our fight was not against the fish, the drones, or the ocean itself. Our true battle was against the darkness within us, the fears that threatened to consume us, the memories that taunted us with their laughter. The war had begun, not just on this ship, but within each of us. We were all caught in this storm, bound by fate and desperation, and as I looked into Nathan's eyes, I saw a reflection of my own soul, flawed, broken, yet fiercely alive, fighting against the tide. No other answer existed but to embrace the chaos, to stand together against the darkness, and as the waves crashed around us, I held on to hope, however fragile, as we plunged deeper into the abyss. The ground trembles, a low rumble that vibrates through the soles of my boots, threatening to swallow my heart whole. I crouch behind a gnarled tree, its roots twisting like an ancient serpent reaching for the earth. The shadows whisper conspiracies, dark tales of what lies ahead, and the air is thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, something primal. I can hear them, the wild boars, crashing through the underbrush, their grunts a guttural symphony of chaos. I remember the first time I encountered them, a flash of bristled fur, tusks glinting like knives in the moonlight. The ferocity of nature unveiled, and I stood paralyzed, a spectator in this unyielding theater. Now, the echoes of fear clutch at my throat. Surrounding me are two souls, tethered to the moment by a shared desperation. Maya, her breaths quick and shallow, clutches her camera like a lifeline. She's the dreamer, eyes wide, seeking beauty in the monstrous. "We should document this," she whispers, skin glistening with sweat, each bead a testament to her resolve. But it's not beauty that's about to unfold, it's something darker, a reckoning. Beneath her bravado lies tremulous fear, the gnawing doubt that this might be their last adventure. Then there's Lucas, the skeptic, practical to a fault. He's counting the seconds, mentally calculating their escape routes, his mind racing like a wild stallion unbridled. "Maya, we need to go." "Now," he insists, voice low, but urgency crackles in the air between us. I can see the conflict etched across his face, the desire to protect, to flee, warring with the deep-seated curiosity that has brought us here. The night is a canvas, and they are trapped in the hues of terror and thrill. The crashing grows louder, more relentless. My pulse quickens, rhythm echoing the impending storm. I remember the stories of boars, how their eyes glow like embers in the dark, the way they charge with a righteous fury that speaks of survival. Each footfall draws closer, and I can feel the weight of their presence. Maya edges forward, her heart on her sleeve, the camera poised to capture the wildness, the raw vitality of life untamed. "Look," she breathes, a mix of awe and dread, "they're beautiful." But beauty can be a mirage, a fleeting illusion that dances just out of reach. And as the underbrush parts, revealing the ferocious band of boars, I realize that beauty and danger are entwined, inseparable like the darkest shadows and the faintest light. The leader emerges, massive and scarred, a titan of the forest, tusks gleaming like the fangs of some mythical beast. Its snout snuffles the air, searching, hunting. I can almost hear the heartbeat of the earth synchronize with my own. Fear, primal and consuming, thunders through me. Lucas's hand shoots out, gripping my arm, a silent plea for us to remain hidden. This is no longer an adventure, it's a test of wills, a dance on the edge of oblivion. But Maya is entranced, the camera now a mere extension of her being, capturing every moment, the fierce determination in the boar's eyes, the raw energy that radiates from its stance. "I have to get closer," she whispers, and in that moment, time stretches and snaps like a thin thread, the world around us morphing into a surreal dance of life and death. "Don't!" I hiss, a desperation in my voice that pierces the silence. But she's already stepping forward, drawn by an invisible force, the boars oblivious to her presence. My heart races, a frantic drum against the chaos of the night. Then it happens, a crack, sharp and explosive. A branch breaks underfoot, a sound that reverberates like thunder in the stillness. The boars turn, their eyes locking onto Maya, and I see it, the primal instinct, the raw ferocity unleashed. "Maya!" I scream, but my voice is swallowed by the roar of adrenaline coursing through my veins. Lucas lunges, grabbing her shoulder just as the leader charges. The world spins, a whirlpool of motion and fear. Maya's eyes widen, realization washing over her, a moment of clarity amid the storm. She stumbles backward, and in that heartbeat, everything hangs in the balance. I can't breathe. I can only watch as the boar, a dark silhouette against the moonlit backdrop, thunders forward, and I am frozen, a mere witness to the chaos unfurling before me. Lucas shoves Maya back, instinctively positioning himself between her and the encroaching danger. "Run," he yells, but Maya's gaze is locked on the beast, a mirror of wildness reflecting her own spirit. And then, as if time has conspired against us, the moment of reckoning arrives. The boar lunges, teeth bared, and I feel the ground beneath me shift, the universe teetering on the precipice of chaos. In this instant, I recall every heartbeat, every moment leading to this, how life can pivot on a single decision, a breath held too long, a choice made too soon. The air thickens with tension, the boars growl, a low rumble of nature asserting itself, a primal reminder that we are but guests in this world. Maya's camera falls, forgotten, a casualty of the moment. The charge is a blur, a cacophony of sound and fury. I want to reach out, to pull Maya back, to protect her from the wildness that is both beautiful and terrifying. My body moves without thought, instinct driving me forward, but there's no stopping the force of nature unleashed. The darkness closes in, and I realize we are all but shadows in a realm governed by something far greater than ourselves. Time expands, contracts, and in that swirling vortex, I see the faces of my companions, their fears, their dreams, the weight of their lives hanging in the balance. As the boar draws near, I can feel the heartbeat of the forest thrumming in my chest, an echo of life and death converging. I want to scream, to laugh, to cry, but all I do is stand, paralyzed in the face of nature's ferocity. The air hums with a tension that promises to shatter, to explode into chaos at any moment. And then the world erupts into silence, a pause before the storm breaks loose, as if the universe itself is holding its breath, waiting for what comes next. The air was thick, heavy with the stench of damp earth and something sharper, something rotten. A full moon hung in the sky, turning the world silver and shadow. I stumbled through the overgrown garden, my heart pounding like a war drum against the silence that cloaked the night. Each step crunched against twigs, the sound piercing the stillness, echoing like a warning into the void. The trees loomed like ancient sentinels, their twisted branches reaching out with a grasping, clawed urgency. Somewhere in the dark, whispers floated, soft yet threatening, a predator prowling just out of sight. I could feel it. The weight of those eyes, heavy as stone, pressing against my back. I turned, breath hitching, catching glimpses of sleek bodies slinking through the underbrush. Ferrets? Weasels? They were shadows made flesh, their movements fluid, stealthy, assassins in a world where darkness reigned. I could almost hear them, the rustle of fur, the scrape of claws against bark, the patter of paws against the ground. Stay calm, I whispered to myself, but the tremor in my voice betrayed me. I wasn't alone. My pulse quickened, not just from fear, but from the electricity of it. This was Pippa's world, the world she had chosen. She was out here somewhere, chasing after a thrill, a madness I could only feel. Pippa was wild, the storm in a glass jar. I remembered the way her laughter danced over the chaos, the way she spun tales of adventure with a glint in her eye. Life's too short, Ben. We need to embrace it, every shadow, every whispered secret, she'd said, her words a melody I couldn't escape, even now. But those ferrets and weasels, they weren't just figments of her imagination. They were real, and they were a threat. The garden was her sanctuary, it held echoes of her laughter, but tonight it felt like a graveyard, each shadow a ghost of what could be. Pippa! I called, a desperate plea laced with fear, the name tumbling out like a prayer. The wind carried it away, swallowed by the void between the trees. A rustle, a flash of movement. My heart clenched. There she was, mid-laugh, her silhouette framed by the moonlight, her body low to the ground, as if she was one with the earth. Look, Ben! They're here, she exclaimed, eyes wide with a fervor that sent chills down my spine. But it was the kind of fervor that made me want to pull her back, to wrap her in my arms and shield her from whatever darkness lurked in those shadows. Pippa, we need to go. I hissed, but she was already too far gone, lost in the thrill of the chase. And then, a flash of fur, quick, deceptive, like a phantom darting through a graveyard. I saw it, a weasel, its body coiling and twisting like a serpent, eyes glinting with predatory hunger. I felt a cold sweat prick at my brow. Instinctively, I moved toward her, but a darkness pulled at my feet, weighed me down. Pippa! I cried, louder this time, desperation clawing at my throat. She turned, eyes alight, and for a moment, time froze. I saw the wildness in her gaze, a beautiful, terrifying thing. She was part ferret, part weasel, a creature of the night. You have to see this. They're so beautiful. Beautiful? I swallowed hard, the word like ashes in my mouth. I wanted to scream, to grab her and pull her away from the edge, from the seductive pull of danger. These weren't just animals, they were shadows, lurking, waiting. I stumbled closer, each step a battle against the pull of the night, against the call of the wild. The moon cast long shadows, and in those shadows, I saw flashes of movement, more weasels, more ferrets, weaving between the thick brush, eyes glimmering like shards of glass. "What are they doing?" I whispered, the question clinging to my lips. My heart raced as if trying to outrun the truth. Pippa was fascinated, entranced, her laughter echoing through the garden as she knelt to the earth, hands grazing the ground, whispering secrets to the shadows. I was terrified. It was then I felt it, the weight of something ancient creeping up my spine. Was it fear? Or was it something darker? I remembered stories from my childhood, the tales of creatures who danced at the edges of night, who whispered promises and lured people into the dark. My breath quickened, panic tightening my chest. There was something sinister wrapped in the innocent guise of these weasels lurking in the shadows. "Pippa, please," I begged, my voice breaking, raw with emotion. "We have to go." But she was lost to the thrill, the pulse of adventure that coursed through her veins. "Just a little longer," she responded, defiance crackling in the air like static, her eyes daring me to pull her back from the brink. The weasels danced around her, shadows encroaching, their movements a sinister ballet. And then I saw it, an enormous ferret, larger than the rest, emerging from the darkness. It was magnificent and terrifying, its gaze piercing through the shadows, locking onto Pippa with an intensity that sent a shiver through me. I stepped forward, the distance between us collapsing, but the ground was soaked with something wet, slick, and my feet slipped. "Pippa!" I screamed, my heart in my throat, but the words hung in the air like smoke. In that moment, time fractured. The ferret lunged, shadows converged, and I saw the flicker of her smile, a reflection of the thrill she craved. The garden felt alive, the moonlit glisten of the leaves turning to a haunting shimmer. I reached for her, my fingers brushing against the cool air, but it was futile, she was lost to the dance of the night. "Ben," she cried, laughter transforming into something unrecognizable, a sound twisting with fear and exhilaration, the shadow of her spirit swallowed whole. I lunged, desperation clawing at my insides, but the shadows wrapped around her, hollow laughter echoing into the void. And just like that, the world shifted. Beneath the silver glow, I stood alone, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth and the fading echo of her laughter. The shadows closed in, the ferrets and weasels watching, waiting, their eyes gleaming with unspoken secrets. And somewhere in that dark garden, a part of me knew this was only the beginning. The air was thick with the scent of impending rain, and the jungle was alive with a cacophony of sounds, rustling leaves, distant howls, the urgent chatter of an unseen world. I stood there, heart racing, caught between the whispers of the past and the weight of the present. The baboons were everywhere, a chaotic mass of fur and muscle, their eyes glinting with an intelligence that sent chills down my spine. In this moment, I was acutely aware of every heartbeat, every breath, as if the forest itself held its breath, waiting for something to shatter the stillness. A rustle broke the quiet, sharp and sudden. My instinct screamed danger. The ground trembled beneath me as an enormous shadow surged into view, charging through the underbrush. I froze, a wild mix of fear and awe gripping me. The leader of the baboon troop, a massive male with scars that told stories of battles fought and lost, stood before me, his posture regal yet threatening. His eyes, fierce and knowing, bore into my soul, as if sizing me up for a choice I wasn't prepared to make. "You think you understand power," he seemed to say, his voice a low growl vibrating through the air. "You think you can control what you do not comprehend." I shivered, the weight of his gaze rooting me to the spot. I remember my sister, Anna, her laughter echoing like a distant memory. She had always described the world as a living tapestry, every thread significant, each color vibrant. I had dismissed her innocence, but standing here, with the baboons as guardians, I felt the truth of her words. The troop surged forward, a swirling mass of limbs and teeth. And there was Yarek, my comrade, leaping into the fray with reckless abandon, his heart set on proving himself, on redeeming the mistakes of his past. I remember his face, determined, but underneath, a flicker of desperation. He had always been the impulsive one, chasing glory in the shadows of ancient warriors, but now, he was charging headfirst into a living nightmare. "Yarek! Wait!" I shouted, my voice lost in the roar of the troop. But he was already lost, his adrenaline blinding him to the danger that loomed like a storm cloud. The baboons were not mere animals, they were the echoes of battles long forgotten, protectors of a world that still held its breath in the face of history. Each scream, each clash of teeth and fur resonated with a primal call, the ghosts of ancient armies rising anew. I lunged forward, desperation clawing at my chest. My hands reached for Yarrick, but the scene morphed into a blur of chaos. Baboon against baboon, and there, tangled in the fury, was the heart of our conflict. Yarrick, eyes wild, caught in the grip of a beast larger than life. In that moment, time stretched, pulsing with the unyielding force of fate. I remember the stories Anna told me, the myths of gods and monsters, battles fought for love, for honor, for survival. But this was real, raw, and unyielding. I could feel the tension coiling tighter like a noose, an energy that danced in the air. Fear twisted in my stomach, a visceral reminder of my own failures. I was not the hero of the story, I was merely a spectator in this living theater of ferocity. I watched as Yarrick faltered, his bravado slipping away like sand through his fingers, and I couldn't help but think of the fragility of life. Here we were, two men bound by camaraderie, now caught in a battle that wasn't ours to fight. Yarrick! I screamed again, my heart pounding, a frantic drumbeat against the chaos. The world around us pulsed with an intensity only matched by my own rising dread. I stepped forward, ready to face the wrath of the troop, ready to confront the primal energy that surged between us like a living thing. The baboon leader, a titan of raw power, turned toward me, eyes narrowing, a challenge simmering in the air. In that moment, I felt Anna's presence, a whisper of memory urging me on. "You must fight for what you believe in," she had said, her voice a balm in the storm of my thoughts. "Even when the world seems hell-bent on tearing you apart." And here I was, caught in the crossfire of my own inadequacies and fears, facing down a beast that embodied the chaos of history itself. But the baboons weren't just beasts, they were guardians, the echoes of warriors long gone, soldiers of a forgotten age. They charged forth, and I braced myself, my breath hitching as I felt the electric current of their energy wash over me. This was more than a battle, it was a reckoning. A moment of truth that would carve itself into the annals of time. "Together!" I shouted, and as if on cue, Yarrick turned, our eyes locking. I saw the flicker of understanding, the spark of shared resolve igniting between us. We were flawed, yes, each carrying the weight of our mistakes, our regrets, but in that moment, we stood united, ready to face the storm. The troop surged forward, and I felt the world around me blur into a symphony of chaos and fury. I remember the wild cries, the sharpness of teeth against skin, the visceral connection to something greater, something ancient. It was more than a battle, it was a communion with the ghosts of those who had come before us, a meeting with destiny. In this charged atmosphere, shadows danced around us, twisted in the fading light of the jungle. I could feel the heartbeat of the earth beneath my feet, a reminder of the life that pulsed around us, of the power we wielded, even in our flaws. Bound by the chaos of the present, we were but fleeting characters in a larger tale, forever entwined in the echoes of the past. And as I stood there, heart racing, adrenaline surging, I knew this wasn't the end. No, it was merely the beginning, a prelude to the storm that awaited us. The baboons, guardians of ancient armies, were not just creatures of instinct, they were our connection to something vast, something eternal. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, I felt the pull of the cosmos, urging me onward, deeper into the night, into the heart of the unknown. The night was a whisper, warm and heavy, smothering the earth like a thick, damp blanket. Shadows danced in the flickering light of a single street lamp, casting long fingers of darkness that crept across the pavement. I stood frozen, heart pounding, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The world felt alive, electric, every breath a silent scream. I could hear them, the creatures of the night, rustling just beyond the edge of clarity, a symphony of uncertainty playing out in the spaces between breaths. And then, a scream pierced the night, raw and jagged, slicing through the tension like a knife through flesh. It was Jenna. I remember her face, illuminated in that fleeting moment, a mask of fear, eyes wide like saucers. She was running, her feet barely touching the ground, a wild fawn darting through the underbrush, pursued by a relentless predator. "Help me!" Her voice cracked like glass, shattering the silence that lay thick around us. I could feel her panic clawing at my insides, and I stumbled, caught between instinct and the paralyzing grip of fear. But there was no time to think. I turned and ran, every step a desperate leap toward her. I saw them, figures lurking behind the trees, shadows cloaked in malice. They moved like deer in the moonlight, swift and agile, weaving through the darkness with a grace that belied their sinister intent. They were hunting. In that moment, I was no longer merely a bystander, I was part of the chaos, a thread woven into a tapestry of terror. My heart raced as I closed the distance, but the ground felt treacherous beneath my feet, each step echoing my own heartbeat, thump, 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 until it blurred into the cacophony of the night. Jenna stumbled, and I could feel time stretching, warping. I remember the way she fell, her hands grasping for something, anything to hold on to. "Get up! Get up!" I screamed, the words tearing from my throat like a wounded animal. But the shadows were closing in, hungry shapes that breathed malice. The figures emerged, their laughter dark and mocking, a twisted harmony that sent chills down my spine. I recognized one of them, Ben, a familiar face wrapped in cruelty. He always wore a sneer, a constant reminder that life was a game to be won, by any means necessary. "Look who's playing hero," he jeered, his voice dripping with contempt. I wanted to lash out, to claw back at the darkness, but fear held me captive. Jenna's eyes pleaded with me, and I could feel her fear wrapping around my heart like a vice. "Please, don't let them," she gasped, and I saw the flicker of hope die in her eyes. They circled us, a pack of wolves, their movements fluid and terrifying. I could hear whispers, taunts mingling with laughter, mocking our very existence. "You think you can escape?" Ben sneered, stepping closer, his breath hot against my skin. I could smell the bitterness of his ambition, the rotting flesh of his conscience. "You're nothing but prey." I felt trapped, as if the walls of the night were closing in. The shadows were alive, shifting and writhing around us, a living nightmare that threatened to swallow us whole. And then, in the midst of that chaos, a flicker of defiance ignited within me. I could not abandon Jenna. I could not let them win. "Run!" I shouted, urgency surging through my veins. "I'll hold them off." It was a reckless promise, but desperation fueled my courage. I faced the darkness, steeling myself against the tide of fear that threatened to drown me. "Don't be a fool!" Jenna cried, her voice a haunting echo that lingered in the air, but I was already moving. I felt the heat of their gazes on my back, the weight of their malice pressing down like an iron shroud. I faced Ben, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just him and me. The laughter faded, and all that remained was the pulse of fury in my chest. "You think you can break us?" I spat, my voice as fierce as a battle cry. "You're nothing but a coward hiding behind your friends." His face twisted, rage igniting his features. "You'll regret this," he hissed, advancing with a darkness that threatened to engulf me. But I was done cowering in the shadows. I was done letting fear dictate my steps. The confrontation accelerated, a blur of movement, adrenaline surging like wildfire. I charged forward, hands clenched into fists, channeling every ounce of raw emotion into that singular moment, a desperate thrust against the tide of cruelty. I felt weightless, alive, every heartbeat echoing through the night, a reminder that I still had fight within me. The clash of bodies was violent, chaos erupting like a storm. I could feel their laughter transforming into shouts of anger, the air thickening with hostility. Jenna was behind me, a silent guardian against the darkness. And yet, amidst the struggle, I could sense the fragility of our resolve, the breaking point lurking just beyond reach. And then there came a moment, the heartbeat of stillness where time held its breath. I caught a glimpse of Ben's face, twisted in rage, and I thought of the lives we led, the moments that brought us here. I remembered nights spent in laughter, dreams whispered under a canopy of stars. How had it come to this? How had we traded joy for shadows? But the moment shattered when a blow landed squarely against my ribs, pain blossoming like wildfire, knocking the wind from my lungs. I gasped, the world spinning as shadows closed in around me. I could hear Jenna's voice cutting through the chaos, a desperate plea, and I fought to rise, to push through the suffocating grip of despair. Get up! We can't let them win. I remember her face, the determination burning in her eyes. It wrapped around me like a lifeline, pulling me back from the brink. I could feel the shadows receding, the darkness losing its grip, and in that moment, I understood. We were deer and antelope, both fragile and fierce, caught in a dance of survival, and we would not be broken. The night pulsed with an intensity that echoed through us, a reminder that even in the depths of despair, we had each other, a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. And as the first rays of dawn broke through the horizon, the silhouette of our tormentors began to fade, swallowed by the light. But I could still feel the weight of their shadows lingering, a haunting echo in the back of my mind, a reminder that the night was never truly over. With every heartbeat, every breath, we would continue to fight. The chase was far from over, and the dance of survival had only just begun. The ground trembles beneath the weight of an unseen force, a shudder that cuts through the cool night air like a knife. Shadows dance widely across the battlefield, flickering orange and red, illuminating the faces of men who stand frozen, hearts pounding, breath held. They clutch their weapons with white-knuckled intensity, eyes wide with disbelief and raw terror, as a shape emerges from the fog, a dragon, scales glistening like obsidian, eyes glowing with a predatory intelligence that sends chills racing down spines. I remember the night vividly, the acrid smell of smoke filling my lungs, the taste of fear bitter on my tongue. My comrades, my brothers in arms, all of us young, eager, caught in the whirlwind of fate. There was Marcus, with his quick laughter, always ready with a jest even in the darkest of times. He stood beside me, his face pale, yet his lips curled in a feeble attempt at humor. I thought the legends were just tales for the children, he said, voice trembling, but I guess they never really stopped believing. And then there was Ilara, a healer tasked with stitching wounds and soothing souls, her hand skilled yet trembling with doubt as she watched the beast loom larger. She believed in the stories, every word echoing in her heart, yet in that moment, the weight of her faith felt like a noose tightening around her neck. What if the creatures are the ones who judge us, she whispered, fingers fidgeting at her side, as if she could summon the courage to face the monster with sheer will alone. What if we're the ones who are truly cursed? The dragon's roar shattered the silence, a sound that seemed to fracture the very air, making the night feel alive, electric, as if the universe held its breath. I felt it reverberate in my bones, a pulse that matched the frantic beat of my heart. Hold fast, a voice cried out, but the words felt inadequate, crumbling like ash in the wind. Time slowed, each heartbeat stretched, each moment a frozen glimpse into the chaos yet to come. I could see the tendrils of fear creeping into the souls of men, the flicker of courage waning like a dying flame. They would tell stories of this night, tales of bravery and loss, of a beast and its flame, but in reality, it was not just the dragon they battled, but their very own shadows. I remember the stories passed around the campfires, hushed whispers of creatures that crawled out of nightmares. Chimeras that roamed the earth with eyes of fire, griffins that soared through the skies, merfolk whose songs lured sailors to their doom. Legends that soothed the heart with their wonder, yet gnawed at the mind with their terror. I was always one to roll my eyes at such tales, a self-proclaimed historian who scoffed at the superstitions of the past. Yet standing there, face to face with a living myth, I felt the truth of those tales seep into my bones, a chilling realization that we were mere mortals, standing before forces far beyond our comprehension. I could see Marcus' fingers twitch, the hilt of his sword digging into his palm, his resolve wavering like a candle in a storm. They said the dragon was a guardian, he muttered, almost to himself, but what does it guard against? Us? His voice cracked, the laughter gone, replaced with the stark terror of reality. I wanted to reassure him, to pull him close and promise that everything would be all right, but the truth was, I too felt the weight of dread. What if we were the ones to be judged? Ilara's gaze was fixed on the dragon's glowing eyes, as if searching for understanding amid the chaos. It's a creature of war, she breathed, born from the ashes of conflict. It feeds on the hearts of men. We're not here to fight it, we're here to prove we're worthy of surviving. The weight of her words pressed against me, a truth I couldn't shake. Each of us carried our own burdens, our own ghosts, and as that beast drew nearer, it felt like a reckoning, a confrontation with the very essence of warfare itself. The dragon lunged, and the world erupted in flames. The heat washed over me like a wave, searing my skin, the roar reverberating in my chest. I could hear the screams of men, their cries intertwining with the beast's growl, a macabre symphony of fear and fury. I gripped my sword tighter, knuckles white, a single thought coursing through my mind: fight or flee. But what was the point? I laughed bitterly at the absurdity of it all. We didn't stand a chance against something born from the myths of our own making. Together? I yelled, voice hoarse, the command torn from my throat. It was all I had, a feeble hope to bind us. The soldiers around me rallied, driven not by courage but by sheer desperation, the primal instinct to survive pushing us forward. Marcus charged, and I followed, heart racing, as we hurtled toward the embodiment of our worst fears. I remember the fire, the heat, the weight of despair as we clashed against the dragon's wrath. It was no longer just a creature of fantasy, it had become the manifestation of our failures, our regrets, our sins laid bare. Each swing of my weapon felt futile against the scales that shimmered like night. But in that chaos, amidst the swirling flames and the cries of the fallen, a flicker of clarity pierced through the haze. Ilara, with her unwavering spirit, had found her place within the turmoil. "Your strength is in the truth," she shouted, her voice emerging like a beacon of hope slicing through the din. "This beast feeds on our fears. Face it. Face yourself." As I faced the dragon, I found its eyes reflecting my own, the darkness within revealing all the doubts I'd ever harbored. The stories weren't merely about triumph or terror, they were mirrors held up to our souls, revealing the shadows that lurked within each of us. And so, the battle raged on, a chaotic dance of flame and fury, but the outcome became less important than the realization that pulsed through me. In the face of mythical beasts and war, we were nothing if not reflections of our deepest selves, echoes of the legends we feared yet craved. This night wouldn't end with a hero's song or a tale of victory, it would linger as an eternal whisper, reminding us of the shadows we fought and the burdens we bore. The conflict wasn't just outside, it was an endless cycle of myth and reality, forever entwined. And as I plunged into the fray, I swore to carry that truth, that understanding, into whatever storm awaited us next. The night was alive with the sound of distant hooves, a haunting rhythm echoing through the chilling air, a reminder that somewhere, in the darkness, war breathed heavy. The shadows twisted around Carl, pulling him deeper into the chaos of the battlefield, where every fleeting moment felt like a heartbeat away from oblivion. He stood, heart racing, as the horses galloped toward the echoes of clashing steel, their breaths mingling with the smoke of gunpowder. The sharp tang of fear tasted bitter on his tongue, but what haunted him the most was not the war itself. No, it was the memory of Bella, the mare he had raised from a foal, her spirit intertwined with his own. "Come on, Bella," he whispered into the night, though he knew she wouldn't answer. She was out there, somewhere, caught between the frenzy of men and the instinct that drove her to flee or fight. He could feel her panic, her pulse racing in sync with his, a tether that bound them across the chaos. The very thought of her terrified him. The soldier's life was fraught with demons, but to lose her? That would be a wound deeper than any bayonet could inflict. Nearby, Private Miller struggled to keep steady as he wrestled with his own demons. The stench of blood and burnt flesh filled the air, but this was nothing new. Every battle brought its own ghosts. Tonight, though, it was different. Tonight, the weight of his past pressed down like an anchor, dragging him toward a darkness he couldn't escape. He remembered the day he'd seen his young sister ride their old mare, how she'd laughed as the horse galloped along the riverbank. She had no idea then that war would come, that men would forget the beauty of such moments. Now, as he clutched his rifle, all he could see was her face, twisted in fear, as she watched him march away. "Why are we here? What do they want from us?" he muttered to himself, the words slipping into the void. The horses, with their wild eyes and flaring nostrils, seemed to sense his turmoil, their fear palpable. His heart ached for their uncertain fates, just as it ached for his sister, for the laughter lost to the clamor of war. And then there was Zara, a fierce and relentless spirit, who had chosen to fight alongside the men. The weight of her choices felt heavy tonight. As she crouched in the mud, the chill seeping into her bones, she could almost hear the echoes of her mother's warnings. A woman's place is not on the battlefield, they had said, but the world had changed, hadn't it? The horses she trained were more than beasts of burden, they were comrades, warriors in their own right, carrying the dreams and nightmares of those who rode them. "Stay close, Thunder," she whispered to the stallion, who shifted nervously beneath her. His muscles coiled, ready to spring at the slightest hint of danger. Together, they had forged an unbreakable bond, an alliance that defied the odds. But could they withstand the storm that loomed before them? The cacophony of battle crescendoed, and the air thickened with dread. A shrill scream pierced the night, shattering the fragile stillness. Carl's heart dropped as he realized it was the sound of a wounded horse, a sound he had heard before, echoing through his nightmares. "No," he shouted, pain clawing at his throat as he took off, racing toward the cries. "Wait!" Miller called after him, but the urgency coursing through Carl was unstoppable. He dashed through the chaos, dodging bodies, the adrenaline propelling him forward, driven by the hope that it wasn't Bella. As he rounded a corner, the sight that met his eyes stopped him cold. A soldier stood over a downed horse, his blade poised to strike. Time froze, a still moment suspended in terror, the world narrowing to that single point of action. "Stop!" Carl roared, but the soldier's face was shadowed, his intentions obscured by the haze of violence. In that split second, a shiver raced down Carl's spine, the bond he shared with Bella coursing through his veins, a desperate plea for survival. "Get away from her," he screamed, the sound ripping through him, raw and primal. The soldier turned, eyes wide with confusion, and Carl lunged forward, fueled by an instinctual fury. In the depths of the smoke, Zara's heart raced as she recognized the chaos unfolding before her. "Carl," she cried, her voice lost in the din. The bond she shared with Thunder surged as she moved, the stallion sensing her urgency. Together, they galloped toward the fray, each hoofbeat a reminder that in war, it wasn't just men who suffered, it was the animals, too, the silent witnesses to human folly. The air crackled with electricity as Carl collided with the soldier, and they tumbled to the ground, grappling for control. But the world around them twisted, a kaleidoscope of shadows and screams. It was not just a fight for survival, it was a fight for the very heart of humanity, for the souls of animals caught in the crossfire. Every shout, every clash of metal against metal was a reminder that war was not just fought in the trenches or the skies, but in the hearts of those who bore its weight. And as the cries of the wounded filled the air, the realization hit with the force of a cannonball: they were all part of a legacy, one that would echo through time and leave its mark on the soul of combat. Zara reached the chaos, her heart pounding, but in that moment of intensity, she spotted Bella standing, wild-eyed, amidst the turmoil. "Bella," she called, reaching for the mare, the tether of their bond stronger than fear. But as she moved, a shadow loomed over her, and a scream tore from her lips, the horror of the moment wrapping its icy fingers around her throat. Carl's world narrowed to the sound of his heartbeat, the breath of the horse beneath him, the weight of what lay ahead. The battlefield blurred, but one truth remained clear: in this twisted dance of survival, the legacy of animals in warfare was a reminder of the price of humanity's choices. And here, amidst the chaos, each heartbeat, every breath, whispered the stories of those who fought and those who fell, an echo that would never truly fade.